19th, 2010. The first item of business this morning, I'd like everyone to, because we don't have an invocation, I'd like everyone to stand and take a few moments and in your own heart and your own mind say a prayer for our good friend Lee Milligan. And then the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will then ask the clerk to give us a roll call, please.
Dan Rabel. Alfred Schrank. Here. Julie Spear. Here. Joe Hurchin. Here. Bill Peavy. Here. Gerald Peterson. Here. Charlie Grant. Here. Greg Telejohn. Roger Larson. Here. Richard King. Here. Frederick Horn. Here. John Mortensen. Here. Esther Wentz. Here. Gene Ritz. Here. David Peterson. Here. David Osnes. Here. Lauren Sather. Here. Richard Marzoff. Here. Sharon Norton-Bauman. Here. Peter Post. Here. Roger Rebholz. Here. Bill Cranmer is absent. Darrell Standifer. Here. John Borup. Here. Clarence Malick. Here. Steve Hermson. Here. Kenneth Colby. Here. Cindy Leonard. Linda Lucky. Here. Brian Seacard. Here. And Laura Tommerdahl is absent. 28.
We have 28 present, 3 absent, so. We'll then ask our administrative coordinator to give us his report, please.
Morning, everybody. A couple things to bring to the board here today. Remind everybody that department head reviews generally start this month. Your committees generally work on those. Any committee chair that would like a performance evaluation form, please contact either my office or the HR office, and we'll get you one. Knowing that your term is over in April, if you want to have one done before your term is over, it would be good to get started on that here at your February meetings. We'll note that there was a discussion at the Finance Committee to ask the board to revisit a portion of the tobacco resolution that was done a couple months ago. I believe that's going to get referred to the Health and Human Services Committee, even though this board is the one that adopted it. I won't go through all the parliamentary reasons. The discussion at Finance essentially was to consider allowing tobacco use in vehicles in the parking lots of county property. I don't think that's on the Health and Human Services agenda yet, but it might be in February. Board members may see an ad coming out in the next few days looking for office space for the USDA offices in Baldwin. I have had a discussion with the new director out there, and they are being required to look at the market for comparable space and rents in the area. This is not to say that they are looking to get out of our building. There's a lot of questions and discussions that may come in for anything in renewing their lease with us, but if you see that, that is not a preliminary sign that they are somehow leaving. They're just doing that as a requirement from their higher-ups. and I'll report back where we're at with them over the next few months. Everything works very slowly with them, and I expect that we'll have conversations with them for some time. Last Thursday, I was able to make an appearance before the Regional Planning Commission to discuss the I-94 Corridor Coalition. I have mentioned that to this group before. You were kind enough to approve a resolution allowing the county and its representatives to work with the other counties along the I-94 corridor going to the Chippewa Valley and including Barron County. A memorandum of understanding has been put together to kind of solidify that working arrangement. It's being passed around between the county administrators for signing. The Regional Planning Commission will act as the administrator for the group. The timing is very good. We'll have people out in Washington in March at the NACO conferences, meeting with our congressional delegation, and hopefully coordinating with the Minnesota people who are also going to be out there and have put together their corridor coalition. They call theirs the Minnesota Corridor Coalition. We call ours the Wisconsin Corridor Coalition. So the purpose is the same, and the advantages of working together with them should be very positive. The gist of it is that it's a group that will be able to receive state and federal monies. There is no ability to raise monies without going back to county boards, and we don't foresee that happening soon. So hopefully spring, early summer, maybe we'll have something to report back here that's good for the region. We'll note here on the agenda the resolution on the recovery zone bonds. Just noting that you've had conversations on these recovery zone bonds before, that what you're seeing today is a different set of bonds. These are bonds that would be available to the private sector. The discussions that we've had in the past are for the public sector bonds. You may recall some of the discussion being what kind of criteria would have to be put together to determine the allocation of these funds to be used locally. And as you see in the resolution, the discussion for you to consider is to have the EDC act as the county's eyes on the initial review of any requests. There is some legislation that is being discussed in Madison about pulling all county allocations into one state pool. A lot of concern about that from counties who are moving ahead on this. We have had some inquiries, and we had a room full of people here a couple of months ago interested in this, so there's more to happen there, but right now I'm not overly concerned about the legislation. I think if the county proceeds as it has been, we'll deal with the requests as they come in. It's also the resolution on the census. I can speak to that later if you'd like. It's I call it more of a friendly. The idea is to help get the census count as best possible within the county and utilize UW Extension to act on our behalf. That's not a bad role for them. They're doing that in other counties. You know, I'm not sure. I thought I heard 12 something an hour. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stanifer.
Thank you, Chair Rebholz. I would just like to invite the board, taking advantage of one of the points that Coordinator Whiting made, I would like to invite the board, for those of you that are interested and willing to provide feedback to the Finance Committee, either to myself or to any member of the Finance Committee on our reports. We are in the process right now of completing the performance evaluations for the reports to Finance. Specifically, they are Coordinator Whiting, Corp Counsel Timmerman, IT Director Boron, and Building Services Director Tobin. And we invite any feedback that any of you think that we should have, either positively or negatively. Whatever feedback that you think we ought to have as we complete our reviews, I would request that you provide that either to me or to any member of the finance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darrell. You've had a chance to review the agenda. Julie?
I would like to make a motion to remove item number 9, the wage grids.
Second that.
I would like to move a meeting, or have a meeting, county board meeting, February 23rd, to hear this item only, so that the employees, non-reps, can have a place to speak their concerns.
What the reasoning is behind the motion? Is it, I heard, so that employees and the public could speak, I believe. Is that the only reason for it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree that, we just got this information, and you can hardly read it. It isn't real clear how they got where they're at. The information, I'll tell you, I've never been a fan of this study because of the way the job descriptions were manipulated and blah, 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 and I think that can be part of the discussion. But the big thing is there wasn't anybody to ask questions of it yesterday because it was a holiday. I didn't get it till late Friday. I started getting phone calls on Thursday, so we need to spend more time looking at this one issue. And if we wait and do it today, later in the day, by the time that comes up on the agenda, we'll be stroked into a coma and we're liable to do almost anything.
Esther?
You will see that from the resolution that came from the Finance Committee that I voted in the affirmative for this. However, after hearing from people in the community that called me and reviewing and going through some of the things, I have a lot of questions too. I do think the SAFE system is a good thing, and it's something we should go with. But I think we also need to have our supervisors all on board with it and know exactly why we do it. We don't have our HR person here with us today, nor do we have copies of the job descriptions that were handed over to Springstead. They have not come back to us as a county. I would like to have those in hand so when we ask the questions, we know why was somebody downgraded from one position down 3 levels? Or why was somebody raised up from a level to another level? I'd like to know what did that. Was it compensation, education, supervision, type of work? I mean, those are questions that I have, and I've been working with this since we started it. It's a good program. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying we as a board need a lot more information before we can make this kind of a decision that affects so many of us.
John?
I had 2 people stop me as well as telephone calls, and the one of them especially says, it's fine print, have your magnifying glass handy, and I do have, so I haven't read it all yet.
Buzz?
Thinking that this item was going to be on today's agenda, I prepared the following. Dear Supervisors, it's been brought to my attention that, if passed in its present form, Resolution Number 9 on today's agenda, the resolution approving wage grid and 2010 wages for non-union employees, will be unfair to those 3 Aging and Disability Resource Center employees who currently serve as our county's information and assistance specialists. It is these 3 specialists who are responsible for the functional and financial eligibility screenings carried out in order to determine the degree to which potentially qualified county residents are eligible for both state and county assistance funds. Each of these employees has a degree in social work and is well qualified for the unique responsibilities associated with their position. It is my understanding that by switching from the present 7-step pay grid to the new proposed 9-step compensation plan, each of these 3 employees will then move upwards on the pay grid from grade 13 to only grade 8, and will thus incur a loss in wages of approximately $9 per hour. That's a 27.5% cut in pay. Under the new 9-step compensation plan, and for the first time in the history of the county, of the Office on Aging and the ADRC, van drivers and members of the nutrition staff finally will now be compensated for their work. For this, I commend the Finance Committee. In the context of social justice, however, to move the information and assistance specialists mentioned earlier from grade 13 back to grade 8 on the grid, thus causing them to receive $9 per hour less, is both unconscionable and unacceptable. The German philosopher Goethe once wrote, "If we treat another person the way we find them, we make them worse. But if we treat them as they ought to be treated, we then help them become what they are capable of becoming." I respectfully ask that before we vote on it, I won't read the rest of this. I have a copy for each of you, but these are my concerns about this resolution. Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Buck? Before we go to the roll call vote, I would like to add something. Today we have the people from Springstead coming in to help us on this discussion. Now, if we're going to throw the thing out before they get here, how are you going to learn? I think this is an ideal day to learn from them, asking them the questions that you have in your mind. If we don't follow through with that, then we're back to square one again, because this is a good opportunity to ask them those questions. It's the board here meeting with the people that put the thing together.
Couldn't those folks return on the date that we select?
They sure could, except how often can you run those people back and forth? They've got schedules also.
Some people just got those reports this morning. How are they going to look at it?
It does seem to me that, and I've been involved with this from the Finance Committee standpoint for some time, it's a pretty complex subject. It would seem to me that 2 presentations to this county board would not be a waste of time. That hearing from those who are prepared today to speak about it, and hearing from them again, requiring of them, paying them more if we need to, but having them here to answer the questions that arise between now and February 23rd would be a good investment in a major project. I'm with you, Mr. Chairman, that we ought to hear the presentation and the discussion and vote on whether to take it up, to delay action till February 23rd after we've heard from them.
Okay, I tended to agree with that. That's why I brought it up, because they are going to be here today, and the purpose was to discuss this grid. And I personally would like to hear them. Then if you've got questions, you can ask them. Buck makes a good point. There's nothing wrong with them coming again. At this point, is there any other discussion on the amendment that's out there? It's not the amendment. It's a motion to drop 9 from the consent agenda. Buck?
I have a proposal. This would be the way, I guess, to get it before us in the proper format, and that would be to make a motion to table the amendment to amend the agenda until after we have dealt with number 9. Or maybe I mixed up. We could do it now or we could do it then. I'm not going to make a motion to table.
Any other discussion? Then we'll go for the roll call vote.
Motion? And a motion from Supervisor Spears, second by Supervisor Mortensen, to remove item 9, to hold a county board meeting on February 23rd, 2010, for non-rep employees in the public to speak. I don't know if I missed anything on that relating to item number 9. Okay. And public to speak. Is that clear? Okay. Steve Hermson.
Yes.
Kenneth Colby.
Yes.
Cindy Leonard.
Yes.
Linda Lucky. Ryan Seacard.
No.
Dan Rabel.
Yes.
Alfred Frank.
Yes.
Julie Spear.
Yes.
Joe Hurchin.
Yes.
Bill Peavy.
Yes.
Gerald Peterson. Charlie Grant.
Yes.
Greg Teleton. Roger Larson.
Yes.
Richard King.
Yes.
Frederick Horn.
Yes.
John Mortensen.
Yes.
Esther Wentz.
Yes.
Jean Ritz.
Yes.
David Peterson.
No.
David Asnes.
Yes.
Lauren Sather.
Yes.
Richard Marzov.
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman.
No.
Peter Post.
Yes.
Roger Rebholz.
No.
Daryl Standifer.
No.
John Borup.
Yes.
Clarence Malik.
May I offer an explanation for my vote, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you may.
My reasoning is, as I stated just a few moments ago, and I haven't changed my view, that we ought to hear this twice. By just taking it off the agenda, we have said we will hear nothing about it today. So we'll remain completely, those of us who haven't dealt with it in the Finance Committee, will have no more knowledge until February 23rd. And the fine print will still be the fine print. There won't be a PowerPoint presentation, et cetera.
Sharon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of my no vote, I'd like to move that we today hear the report from Springsud concerning the new pay grid.
It's been removed from the agenda, so. Steve?
Thank you, Board Chair. Maybe for Corp Counsel to help us understand something here. We just removed, my understanding is all we've done is remove the ability to vote on a resolution. We can't even hear a report? Okay.
Consent agenda removes, regular agenda? Okay. Okay, now we'll move to a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. I thought I had a motion, but I need a motion to, and Alfie seconds it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Passes, okay? The next thing we'll move on. Yes.
I didn't understand the ramifications of a yes vote, so I'd like to move to reconsider. Because I'd like to hear these people speak today.
I'll second that.
There's a motion to at least hear these people today on a second by Hermson. To reconsider the previous motion. Which removed it from the agenda.
First, we have to vote to reconsider.
Any other additional discussion on that? Did everybody understand that?
Well, there's been some discussion back here between some of us. How can we hear this but not have a vote today? Which I think is probably what everybody wants. And I guess the way we do it is we first vote yes for reconsideration. That gets the item before us again, item number 9, and then somebody makes a motion, but we will not vote on it today, and we pass that. And then it will be left that we hear a report, we discuss, but we don't pass or not pass the item today. 2 steps.
Darrell?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with that. And the proper procedure is if we are going to hear the report today, and I would concur that we should, and if there is a consensus of the board not to vote today, then the proper order should be, once the resolution is moved and placed on the board floor, and now the board owns that resolution, to hear the report, and then Following the report, if the board does not wish to vote on that resolution then should be tabled to a date specific. I've heard a date mentioned, the 23rd, and that would comply with Robert's rules, and there would be no vote taken today.
The alternate would be to postpone.
Postpone to a date certain.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor to reconsider this
Previous motion.
previous motion, removing it from the agenda. Buzz?
I'd like to request a roll call vote, please.
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote on that again.
Okay.
So we don't end up with that same thing about considering a yes or no vote. Can you explain the yes vote and a no vote in this particular motion?
A yes vote means that you are going to then reconsider the vote that you took previously, removing this item from the agenda. You can then vote to put it back on the agenda or to leave it off. A no vote means you don't want to reconsider your previous motion.
All set?
Okay. Ken Colby.
No.
Cindy Leonard. Yes. Linda Lucky.
Yes.
Ryan Seacard.
Yes.
Dan Rabel.
No.
Alfred Schrank.
Yes.
Julie Spear.
No.
Joe Hurchin.
No.
Bill Peavy.
No.
Gerald Peterson.
Yes.
Charlie Grant.
No.
Greg Telejohn. Oops, I'm sorry. Roger Larson.
No.
Richard King.
No.
Frederick Horn.
Yes.
John Mortensen.
No.
Esther Wentz.
No.
Gene Ritz.
Yes.
David Peterson.
Yes.
David Osnes.
No.
Lauren Sather.
No.
Richard Marzov.
No.
Sharon Norton Bauman.
Yes.
Peter Post.
Yes.
Roger Rebholz.
Yes.
Daryl Standifer.
Yes.
John Borup.
Yes.
Clarence Malick. Steve Hermson.
Yes.
13, 14,
13 to 14 yeses and 13 noes.
15, 13, 15, 13. 15, 13. 15, 13.
What Springstead's got to say? They don't want to hear an explanation. God, I don't get it.
Okay, then a motion is in order then to put it... A motion is in order to put it back on the agenda. Buck?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that this is unusual from a Robert's Rules of Order standpoint, but it is acceptable if the group will accept it. And that is a motion to put it on the agenda, but not for a vote today. And if somebody would like, we could say for a vote on February 23rd, you know. And I'm happy to make such a motion.
Fred Horn seconds, Buck makes the motion.
Again, that is to talk about it today, to hear the report, but not to vote on it until February 23rd.
Any other discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
No.
The ayes, the yes carry.
Mr. Chairman, since this is such an unusual motion, I think it would be best if we have it in the record that at least 2/3 voted in favor of it, just like suspending the rules and that kind of thing.
Let's have a roll call vote on it.
So when
Does everybody understand the motion now? Before we go.
Are there any questions on the motions? Mr. Peterson?
I don't want to go around again. Maybe you can explain what a yes vote means here.
A yes vote,
Puts it back.
to me, means that we're going to vote to discuss it today, but not vote on it.
And to hear the report.
And to hear the report from Springstead people.
Okay.
Okay?
Cindy Leonard.
Yes.
Linda Lucky.
Yes.
Ryan Seacard.
Yes.
Dan Rabel. Alfred Schrank.
Yes.
Julie Spear.
Yes.
Joe Hurchin.
Yes.
Bill Peavy.
No.
Gerald Peterson.
Yes.
Charlie Grant.
Yes.
Greg Tellig. Roger Larson.
Yes.
Richard King.
Yes.
Frederick Horn.
Yes.
John Mortensen.
Yes.
Esther Wentz.
Yes.
Jean Ritz.
Yes.
David Peterson.
Yes.
David Osnes.
Yes.
Lauren Sather.
No.
Richard Marzoff.
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman.
Yes.
Peter Post.
Yes.
Roger Rebholz.
Yes.
Daryl Stanifer.
Yes.
John Borup.
Yes.
Clarence Malik. Steve Hermson.
Yes.
And Kenneth Colby.
Yes.
25-3.
And I will accept the appointment to represent the county on the I-94 corridor. So,
You're appointing yourself.
yes. Okay,
While we're on that topic,
yes,
you know, later on in the day, we have the bylaws, and it has a list of related committees, shall we say, to which appointments are made. These are outside committees which may have one or more supervisors on them or citizen members. And is this Western Wisconsin I-94 Corridor Coalition going to be an ongoing thing to which there will be appointments from time to time that ought to be added to that list?
yes, it should be added to it, because it's going to, until they get something established, it's going to be ongoing.
Okay, I'll try to remember that for an amendment later then.
Okay, and then on presentations, I put on your desk this morning a calendar from the workforce development of the county. As your board chair, I represent the county at the workforce development meetings. They hold them about 4 times or 3 times a year. We also have a workforce development office at River Falls, and I do attend their meetings. I just thought it would be good information for me to try to explain workforce development. Gets to be a task, but the information is pretty much in the calendar. If you've got a question, look it up, or if you've got a question that you can't get an answer to, give me a ring and we'll get you the answer. Okay. The first resolution and the first order of business here this morning is the resolution authorizing the St. Croix County Parks Department to apply for a 2010 Lakes Planting Grant. Mr. Ritz, will you bring it to the floor?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wish to bring that resolution to the floor.
Second? Mr. Peavy seconds that. Would you like to explain that, or Bob Heisey is here to help us?
Yeah, what the department wants to do is apply for a Lakes Planning Grant to develop a contour map of Glen Lake. This was actually in the budget. It was planned for. The application submittal needs to be in by February 1st, And so essentially, that's why we're before you today.
Any questions of Bob? Yes, Alfie?
Is there any money that we have to put along with that?
Yeah, it's a lake planning grant is a 75-25 share. So yes, our share was the 25%, which again was already planned for in the budget.
Any other questions? If not, a vote is in order. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Jean will bring to the floor the resolution authorizing the St. Croix County Land and Water Conservation Department to apply for a 2010 Lakes Planning Grant. Second is Bill Peavy. Okay, Bob, you want to bring it to the floor?
This project is actually what we're going to be doing is applying for 2 lake planning grants. And again, this was already planned and scheduled to be a plan in the budget. What we're doing is we're going to be working with the Lake Malibu Association and updating their lake management plan, and then also working with the cities of Hudson and North Hudson on non-point pollution. And that's part, and again, this is a part of an overall effort to develop what we call an implementation plan, or TMDL. Is what we mean by a TMDL is a total maximum daily load. It's a fancy name for impaired water. And what we're doing is developing an implementation plan over the entire Willow River. So this is just part of a much larger project. And so what we plan to be doing is submitting one application coming February, but we will, if we receive it, we'll get part of that in April, and another one in later on in the year for that. Again, it's a 75-25 match. Our 25 match will be coming in-kind contribution for other staff time and other folks that will be participating on our advisory committee. We can use their time as contribution towards this grant effort. So that's essentially what it's about.
Mr. Osnes.
Squaw Lake doesn't fit into any of this? Is that particular grant that they've got on their planning, that's different altogether, correct?
It's a same planning grant, and Alicia's doing that and going to be submitting that also. Here's the difference is the Squaw Lake is the one sponsoring that grant, so it's actually going through the Squaw Lake District rather than St. Croix County in this round.
John?
Is there any additional hiring in this process?
No.
Buck?
I would like to speak in favor of this application and the county's role in it, because Lake Malibu is an important body of water to residents of the city of Hudson, a few residents of the town of Hudson, and residents of the village of North Hudson, whose properties are affected by the possibility of really substantial algae blooms on Lake Malibu if we don't get phosphorus under control pretty quickly. We have begun already to experience some algae blooms, and so that there's in the nature of a crisis, and yet it's the kind of thing that can't be solved by quick action. It has a lag time built into it. People may need to do things with rain gardens, for example. There may be some tweaking in the stormwater system, other activities that take a bit of time to get into effect, and I urge that we participate wholeheartedly in this before it's too late.
Buzz?
I certainly agree with Supervisor Malick's observations, and another important consideration is that Lake Malibu ultimately flows into the St. Croix River, which has an impaired status at this time, and I think it's critical that we protect that resource as well.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry to be such a pest, but could you ask the clerk to record that was a unanimous vote in favor?
The third resolution today is supporting the delayed implementation of farmland preservation rezoning conversion fee. Mr.
Chairman,
Ritz, you bring that to the floor?
I'm going to bring that to the floor and ask Mr. Fedozzi to explain it.
Let's get a second to that. Second by Buzz Marzoff.
Good morning. This resolution is part of an effort of a number of planning and zoning agencies, county planning and zoning agencies throughout the state of Wisconsin in cooperation with the Wisconsin Counties Association. The Wisconsin Working Lands Initiative, which is a major land use initiative, was passed in the state budget bill this last late June and took effect in July. There were an overhaul of the state's farmland preservation program and 2 or 3 other major program items that were added. And while we were satisfied with a lot of the changes that were made, one of the things that was added was a rezoning conversion fee that in our county would assess almost $700 an acre on average for lands rezoned out of our agricultural district, which is a certified exclusive agricultural district under Chapter 91. During the budget deliberations through our committee, we had asked that that be delayed until the required planning and zoning changes were done under the law, so that local units of government, local officials, and landowners had an opportunity to evaluate these affected lands under the new law before that penalty take place. So what this resolution would do is ask the legislature, in conjunction with other counties working through the Counties Association, to delay this penalty until all the required planning and zoning under the law is completed and meets the new provisions of the law that were enacted in July. So this is really a delay of something that was actually went into effect January 1st of this year.
Any questions of Dave? If not, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Okay. Thanks, Dave. I see that both Char Gurney and Bill Rubin are in the audience, so we'll go ahead with Resolution 4, authorizing St. Croix County's participation in the Wisconsin Community Development Block Grant for economic development programs such as the Hebig Architectural Woodwork, LLC. Could I get a motion on the floor for that? Mr. Standifer.
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Second, Sharon seconds that.
Good morning. Before you, you have a resolution. The Wisconsin Department of Commerce manages the federally funded Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, and they have made a preliminary $175,000 loan commitment to Hebig Architectural Woodwork, LLC, out of Baldwin. Since 1981, the company has been located in Baldwin, and in September of 2008, the company was purchased by Aaron Carlson Company, or Aaron Carlson Corporation, out of the Twin Cities. The CDBG funds will be used by Hebig to purchase the land in the building that they're currently in Baldwin, as opposed to a building in Minnesota. So this was an important retention project. The total project cost is $627,000, And the CDBG loan will be used to not only retain the business in Baldwin and retain the company's 15 existing jobs, but also over the next couple of years, there's a project to create an additional 12 full-time positions. Commerce has, as you know, asked St. Croix County to be the applicant of the CDBG grant of a total of $181,000. Again, the loan is for $175,000, and then there's $6,000 for grant administration. The loan repayments for this loan awarded to HeBank will be going to the Regional Business Fund Consolidated Revolving Loan Fund, so it will help capitalize that consolidated fund.
Any questions of Shar? Okay, then if there are no questions, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Carries unanimously, Shar. The next resolution is a resolution establishing agreement with St. Croix Economic Development Corporation relating to the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act Recovery Zone Facility Bonds. Darrell, you bring that to the floor?
Mr. Chairman, you stated that well, and I so move.
Ryan Seacard, second. Bill, you want to give us an explanation of what we need to do there?
I'd hope that the administrative coordinator would have been here to provide the full details. I see he's not here, so I will do so. A little history behind the Recovery Act and the Recovery Zone Facility Bonds. Each county, and there were some exceptions to that, received an allocation of Recovery Zone Facility Bonds as part of the Recovery Act of 2009. St. Croix County received slightly more than $5 million for private purpose activities, such as depreciable property, land, building, and so on. State law prohibits counties from issuing private purpose bonds or conduit type bonds, which then requires a sub-allocation process. The resolution that's in front of you identifies that process. St. Croix EDC, working in conjunction with the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, will pre-screen applications or requests for these recovery zone bonds, make a recommendation to the Finance Committee, but ultimately those requests will be placed in front of the county board for action. Assuming that that occurs, the sub-allocation then goes to the local units of government that have the capacity to issue and sell bonds of this type. So towns, cities, villages would be asked to essentially be the conduit for private purpose activities like the purchase of land, building, equipment, and so on. So the resolution simply addresses the process by which St. Croix EDC, utilizing the resources of the Regional Planning Commission, would screen these requests. And in doing so, the resolution does indicate that a reasonable fee would be assessed applicants. So we think that that's a great idea. It kind of separates pretenders from contenders and so on. So the fee that we've agreed to is 1/10 of 1%. We think that that's pretty reasonable in light of the fact that there's $5 million of allocation floating around for St. Croix County. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions of Bill? Buzz?
Thank you. I think you just answered my question, Bill. It says 1/10 of 1%. Is that of the loan? 1/10 of 1% of the loan amount?
So the allocation is slightly more than $5 million. If a project comes to us seeking, let's say hypothetically, $2 million, we could request an application fee 1/10 of 1% of the request that's currently in front of us. Okay. All things considered, if private activity type projects in the county fully utilize all $5 million, that might yield to us about $5,000 in fee income, less any expenses that we would incur working with the Planning Commission.
Mr. Colby?
You had said that this is going to be now the responsibility of the towns and the cities, is their administration. What kind of cost is that going to be putting on your smaller communities? Let's say some of them that have just a very small board and very small finances. What's that going to be as a cost to them now?
So on occasion, there are some towns, cities, and villages that historically in the past have issued something called, that would be akin to the revenue bonds, called industrial revenue bonds. So there is a process by which a public hearing is held. Likely the sponsoring unit of government would retain the services of what I would typically call a fiscal consultant, somebody that provides advice to those local units of government. Typically there is a bond counsel that provides an opinion as to the tax-exempt nature of the bonds. Those things said, those are costs and expenses that those units of government would incur. Go to the other side of the equation at bond closing. Those are cost of issuance fees that those units of government could recover.
Buzz?
I don't mean to nitpick, maybe it's just a typo, but on item 4 at the bottom of the sheet, there's a different acronym, RZRB. Is that meant to be RZFB?
You are correct. Yep, that's a small typo. You see that, Craig?
Any other questions of Bill? Not, you have the motion and a second in front of you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Aye. How many ayes, how many people were against it? One back there against it, okay. Thank you, Bill and Shar, we appreciate your help.
How did your committee vote?
It is 5 minutes to 10, approximately, and I think we'll take a break right now. We'll be getting into other things right after the break. I think we'll move to resolution number 7 at this time, which is the resolution authorizing establishment of a complete count committee to assist the U.S. Census Bureau in assuring an accurate count of St. Croix County residents in the year 2010 census. Mr. King, would you bring that to the floor?
I'll bring resolution number 7 to the floor.
Is this second out there? Elfie seconds it. Okay, now, Chuck, you want to just mention the implications of this?
As I mentioned earlier, the U.S. Census Bureau is interested in having some local effort to make the upcoming census aware to potential populations, and particularly those that are maybe not easy to find or would want to respond to the census. You do that by getting with the types of groups that we work with in a lot of cases to help facilitate that more visible discussion in the community. So you'll probably see some coordinated advertisement. Our UW Extension departments have excellent relationships with various groups around the county that can get to people who may either need assistance or may not otherwise get contacted by the Census Bureau, address issues and things like that. So that's what it is, and what's at stake, obviously, long-term is our representation in Congress. I think Wisconsin lost a representative 10 years ago. From what I understand, we're not at the same kind of level of risk, but it does matter then for apportionment around the state for legislative districts as well. So, as I said earlier, it's kind of a friendly. It just is to help heighten awareness, and I think UW Extension would serve us well.
Thanks, Chuck. You've had an explanation. You have a Motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We have the Springstead people out here with us this morning now at this point, and I thought rather than have them waiting around all morning, we would take them next on the program. So we just want to have a discussion on the resolution approving, we want to have a discussion on approving wage grid and the 2010 wages for non-union employees. So if you folks, Ann and Nick, if you folks would come forward, we can kind of get some questions started and some explanation of the program.
Good morning. How's everybody today? Good. Good. Just wanted to come and talk to you today about the Springstead study that's been going on for quite a number of years. How many years? Nick, you were there at the start.
I believe 2002 was the first effort, and I think there's been two since, so this is the third one.
So this is the third time, and we started this one 2 years ago. This is my first involvement in the project in St. Croix County. So we started the whole project from scratch again 2 years ago in January of 2008. And as a part of this, everything that was done previously was set aside, and we started from the beginning to develop new job descriptions, evaluate positions, and do a compensation study as a part of this. So during this presentation, please, if you want me to go faster, to slow down, to explain something a little bit further, or if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to ask. Looks like a little car remote. So just a little bit about the objectives that were established at the beginning of this study. Springstead was tasked with reviewing and evaluating the county's classification and compensation program. We wanted to know how the current compensation for positions within the county compared out to the marketplace in comparable organizations. So organizations that were comparable to St. Croix County, organizations with which the county competes with for employees. We wanted to make sure, as a part of this process, that we developed complete and accurate job descriptions for all positions that exist in St. Croix County. We wanted to make sure that they were an accurate reflection of the essential job duties and responsibilities and the minimum requirements of positions within the county. We also wanted to look at developing a compensation system that looked at internal equity. So how do positions within St. Croix County compare to one another, so that positions that are comparable to one another are compensated at a comparable level. But then also looking at market competitiveness. So do the positions in St. Croix County, is their compensation and benefits level competitive with other organizations that you compete with for employees and that are comparable to you? We also wanted to look at developing administrative guidelines for implementation and maintenance. That's a part of the thing that we look at throughout the study, but then at the end of the study, once we adopt a compensation program and a classification system, how do we look at administering that and maintaining that moving into the future so that you don't find yourself in a couple of years starting over again. So you get it set in stone and you can maintain that system moving forward. In here on the slides, there's going to be a lot of terminology that we'll talk about throughout this and that you'll see in the report. This is also included in Appendix A of your report, so I won't spend a lot of time on the terminology unless there's some specifics that you really want me to provide a further explanation. But we'll talk about position descriptions for all positions within the county. Job evaluation. The job evaluation is the tool that we use for looking at the internal comparability of positions within St. Croix County. Internal equity, I talked about that at the beginning, making sure that positions within the county that are comparable to one another are compensated at comparable levels. Pay philosophy, that's one of the most important things that you look at when you're talking about your compensation system. What is the pay philosophy of the county? How do you balance internal equity, so positions comparable to one another, external competitiveness, so how do you want to compare to the market? Do you want to be at the market average? Do you want to be ahead of the curve? So do you want to be at 105% of market? Do you want to be at 95% of market? How do you take employee performance into account in the compensation of employees within your organization? And then how do you administer and maintain that system within the county? Pay grade is simply a level within the compensation plan where positions are assigned. So what is the pay grade that they're assigned? What is the minimum? What's the midpoint? What's the maximum of that pay grade? And this is where you look at internal equity. Positions that are comparable to one another within your organization will typically be at the same grade, but when you also then look at market, there may be some differences in the grade based on market considerations. Midpoint is simply the midpoint of the salary range between the minimum and maximum of the range. Progression through pay grades. How do employees move through a system? Do you have a step system? Do you have an open range system where employees move through it based on time and performance? If there's steps, how do they move through the steps? Is it simply based on longevity, or do you also include a performance factor? So how do they progress? Then methodology. How did we go about doing this study? At the initiation of this part of the study that we started in January of 2008, we had meetings with your county administrative coordinator, with human resources, and then one-on-one meetings with the department heads. What we wanted to find out is what were some of the issues that the county was facing that we needed to address during the course of this study. We wanted to find out about organizational structure, so county-wide and then department-wide, meeting with the department heads. What was the structure of their department? What were the services that were provided by their department? What positions did they have in their department? Did they have any recruitment, retention, or turnover issues? So we wanted to find out about individual departments and county-wide issues before we moved forward with the study, so we were aware of the structure and some of the issues that were faced. We conducted multiple employee meetings at several different locations throughout the county with employees. So we wanted to introduce the project team, so who was going to be working on the study so that the employees could see and meet who was going to be conducting this study. We also, talked a little bit about who we are, although we have a history in the county, so a lot of employees were aware of who Springstead was, but there were also new employees that weren't familiar. We wanted to explain the study, what we were going to be doing, the process we were going to be using, their participation in the process, because we get a lot of employee and supervisor involvement throughout the course of one of these studies. We distributed a position analysis questionnaire, or a PAQ, to all employees and encouraged all employees to participate in whatever level they felt comfortable with. For employees who were the only incumbent in their position, we asked them to complete a position analysis questionnaire because that was the only way we were going to get accurate information on their position. For employees that were in a position with multiple incumbents, we gave them some options for how to complete the PAQ. They could select a core group to sit down, complete the questionnaire, distribute it to the other employees in that position for review and comment. They could sit down as a group, if it was a smaller group, number of people in the position, to complete the questionnaire. Or even if the majority said they wanted a small group, if each individual employee wanted to fill one out, we gave them that option. We wanted all employees to be able to participate in this study at whatever level they felt comfortable doing so. We also gave employees the opportunity to ask any questions, express any concerns over the study during those orientation meetings. Then we did the collection of data. So employees completed the position analysis questionnaires. They were then submitted to their supervisors so that their supervisors could comment and provide input on the positions in the questionnaire. However, supervisors were asked not to change any of the responses that employees gave because we wanted to view the employees' input on their position and the supervisors' input. They then went to department heads and then to human resources for collection, and then they sent them all to Springstead for review. We reviewed all of those and prepared some preliminary position descriptions for the county, sent them back so that all employees and supervisors and department heads would have a chance to review, provide input on the descriptions that we sent back to them, and then they were sent back to us, and we reviewed those, made any revisions that were necessary. Once we got those back, we then did the evaluation of positions so that we could review the internal comparability of positions within the county. That's our job evaluation piece. Once we got those completed, then we did our market salary and benefit survey. When we do this survey, we don't just send out a survey that includes a job title of a position in St. Croix County. We send out a summary of the position as it exists in the county. So, what is the purpose of the position? What are the essential duties? What are the requirements of the position as far as education, experience, any licenses, certifications, registrations, etc. So we sent out a very comprehensive salary survey, asked for minimum and maximum wage of position, actual wage of incumbents, number of incumbents in the position, whether the position was exempt or non-exempt from overtime, the number of hours the position worked in a week, and then also gave the other organizations the opportunity to comment so they could say, we have a comparable position, however, it also performs these functions or it doesn't perform these functions. So we made sure we could get really true comparables. We surveyed 115 positions in the county, and we sent the surveys to 22 different organizations. In the survey, we also asked a lot of other information besides specifics about positions. We asked about what types of compensation programs the other organizations were using. Did they have a step system? If so, how many steps did they have? What was the percentage between steps? How many grades did they have in their compensation program? What was the percentage between grades? What was the spread from min to max? How did employees move through the system? Time, performance, combination. So we gathered a lot of other information. What other additional types of compensation did they offer? Were they offering longevity pay, performance or merit pay, any other additional types of compensation? We also did a very extensive fringe benefit survey on leave policies, insurance, etc. So we did a very comprehensive survey for the county as a part of this process. Once we got the salary survey information back, what we do is we develop a salary line. So we take the job evaluation points of positions and the market wage, and we draw a salary line with which to assist us in developing the compensation plan for the county. Once we do that, we then assign positions to grades within that system based on internal comparability and then also market considerations. So were there reasons that they needed to be moved within the system based on market considerations as far as recruitment or retention or high turnover rates of positions? Then we developed implementation options. So how do individual employees move into that system? How do they move into the plan? What is the cost? Then what were our findings? And all of this is in the report that is in front of you, and we'll also show these. On average, county salaries were competitive with the marketplace. We usually say that salaries are competitive if they're within 5% above or below market average. So on average, your salaries were fairly competitive. Minimum salaries were just a little under 5% below average. Midpoint salaries just a little under 3% below average, and your maximum salaries about 1.5% below average. So your top salaries are more competitive with the marketplace than your starting salaries. Those were the averages. However, for some individual positions within the county, some were very low comparable to the market, and some were high compared to the market. But on average, you were competitive. We also found that there were some internal pay relationship inequities within the county. So some positions that were comparable to one another, they were being compensated at very different levels within the county. There were some county departments that were having some difficulties, recruiting and retaining employees, but it was not a widespread issue within the county. But there was some concern for future difficulty recruiting employees into key positions, into technical positions, management and supervisory level positions, some public safety positions, public health positions. So there are some specific areas where there was concern for recruiting qualified quality employees into certain positions within the county. Then a little bit about pay philosophy. I touched on it earlier, but as part of the pay philosophy, you want to provide fair and equitable compensation to employees. This was discussed as we moved through this study. And again, positions with comparable levels of essential job functions, education, experience, and other knowledge, skills, and abilities should be paid comparable to one another unless there are market conditions that say that they should be compensated at different levels. Want to look at balancing external market with the internal equity of positions within the county. Looking at developing a competitive pay structure, but we also need to be very considerate of the county's current fiscal resources that are available. Since we started this study 2 years ago, there's been a big change in the overall economic picture, not only of St. Croix County, but throughout the country, throughout the world. So there have been some changes in the economics as we've progressed through this study. Looking at a performance-based component for individual employee compensation so that employees move through the wage range based on satisfactory or better performance. So that employees that are not performing up to par should not be progressing through the pay range, and those employees that have exceptional performance, you may want to look at progressing through the pay range at a faster rate given your financial resources that are available. And most important, when we get done with this, we want to be able to develop an understandable compensation program. So not just us as consultants know how to use it, know where employees and positions fit, know how employees move through the range, but it's understandable to your employees, to the elected officials, and to the citizens of the county. Then who did we use as a part of this study? We used the 22 organizations that are listed up on the screen and also in your report. We had a lot of difficulty obtaining information from these other organizations. It took us quite a long period of time to get the information, and when we finally said, okay, we need to stop now because we need to move forward with this study, we had received information from 11 counties. Barron County, they're the ones that you see with asterisks by them, Dane County, Douglas County, Dunn County, Manitowoc, Pierce, Portage County, Ramsey County, Minnesota, the City of River Falls, Sheboygan County, and Washington County, Minnesota. Those are the 11 organizations that responded to our survey. For the big group, we chose these organizations based on size, geographic location, organizational structure, growth patterns, and those with which you compete with for employees. So we used a lot of different factors in selecting this group. Then we have our salary survey information. As I said, we requested the information on 115 positions in the county. We were able to use most of that. There were 23 positions. Those are the ones you see colored in red with a DNU in front of them. That means that we did not use that information in analyzing the information and creating our compensation plan. Reasons we don't use information is it's either incomplete, so we had very few responses, or that the information received was very inconsistent. So the salary ranges were all over the board, so we couldn't say that there was consistency and that was the market rate for a position, or the positions that were reported by the other organizations, there was no consistency in the position that they reported. So the DNU did not use the information. So what you've got up here is the positions surveyed, then the number of respondents, so that's the number of the other organizations that responded that they had a comparable position to the position in St. Croix County. Then the average number of FTEs, so the average number of full-time equivalent employees they reported in that position. Then the first column, that's just the average midpoint salary that was reported for each position. Then for the minimum salary, what was the lowest reported, what was the highest reported, and the average reported salary for each position. Then the lowest and highest midpoint. And then for the maximum salary, what was the lowest maximum, the highest maximum, and the average maximum reported per position. So we have, there's quite the 115 positions we go through. Average number of respondents per position was about 7 responses per position. Not every organization has all of the same positions, so some, reported some positions and others did not. Then, how did it compare to the wages in St. Croix County? This is how it compares. So we have the title, the minimum wage, and that's the minimum wage in St. Croix County in 2009. Then what's the difference, dollar-wise, the difference between the wage in St. Croix County and the average wage of the survey respondents, and then what's the percentage difference? Then also for midpoint and maximum. Those that are colored in red, that means that they are below the market. Those that are in black are above the market average. So we have this for all 115 positions also, and then we get to the averages. So again, an average of 7 respondents, minimum salary just under 5% below, midpoint just under 3, and maximum salary is about 1.5% below. And again, these are the averages. Then I talked earlier about how do we develop the compensation plan. This is the salary curve that I talked about. All of the data points are positions that were surveyed and that we used as part of the analysis as the survey, and the job evaluation points for those positions. So this is where we draw our salary curve that we use to develop the compensation plan, and then positions that were not surveyed are placed into that plan based on their job evaluation points. So job evaluation. When we evaluated the positions, we used the information that employees gave us in the position analysis questionnaire to evaluate positions. The system that we use is the Systematic Analysis and Factor Evaluation System, or the SAFE system. It was created specifically for use in the public sector. It's copyrighted. It has been tested in federal courts and been found to be an equitable tool for evaluating internal comparability of positions within an organization. And it has been recently updated to account for changes in positions, changes in technology, etc. It looks at different skill levels of positions along with the factors that you see up on the screen. So training and ability, what's the educational requirements of the position, what are the required registrations, licenses, certifications of the position. And these are all based on the requirements of the position, not on individual employee accomplishments. So what's it required of the position in order to perform the essential duties of the position? Looking at experience, is there prior work experience required of the position? If so, how much, what type of work experience? Level of work, is it an entry-level position, an intermediate-level position, a supervisory or a management-level position of the type of work that's performed within the organization? Human relations skills, who are they having contact in doing their work? How much contact, what's the type, what's the frequency of the contact? What are the physical demands of the position? What are the working conditions? And working conditions is physical and environmental working conditions and hazards that the position is exposed to, but also what is the level of mental effort or stress that's involved in the work done by a position. How independently does the position work? So do they work under fairly close supervision, or are they very independent? They're establishing policies, procedures, etc. Impact on end results, decisions they make, actions that they take, what's the impact on the organization? And then do they supervise other employees? If so, how many other employees, how many other positions, what types of positions, what is the level of supervision do they have? Are they just assigning and directing the work of other employees, or are they evaluating performance? Do they have the ability to discipline other employees, etc.? So what's the level of supervision? Other things to think about when we talk about job evaluation is the things that are not included in evaluating a position. It does not look at the years of service of an incumbent in the position. It's looking at what the requirements of the position are. So if you were to hire somebody into that position, what are the requirements? It does not look at the job performance of an individual employee. It assumes satisfactory performance of an individual. It does not look at the current rate of pay of an employee in the position, and it doesn't look at educational requirements or degree unless it is required of the position. So with all of this, what we've developed is a 2010 pay plan, and this is for the non-represented positions. The represented positions in the county have contracts that go through 2010, so what we're bringing before you right now is just a pay plan and recommendations for your non-represented positions. What we've got here is 28 grades. We've got 9 steps. There's 6% between grades, and there's 3.8% between steps. We've developed the number of grades and the percentage between grades based on market information. So what are other organizations doing for their compensation plan? The average was, and it goes into more specific detail in the report as to how we came up with this, but the average between grades was 6%. The number of steps actually was a little bit longer. It was actually an average of 11 steps. But the county currently has 7 steps. Union contracts, a lot of those have fewer than 7 steps, so we felt that 11 steps was probably too long of a scale for St. Croix County, so we shortened the number of steps and therefore increased the percentage between steps rather than what the market was doing. Then in your report also at the back is where we have positions assigned. I do not have this up on the screen. Because you wouldn't be able to see it. There's just too many numbers and too small of an area. It's even small in the report. But looking at where we have employees placed, and when we look at this, adopting this, positions do change where they're placed within the system based on current market requirements, based on changes of positions. We did start this study 2 years ago. We received final revisions for job descriptions from the county back in July, so there may have been even some changes since that time to positions or some changes in recruitment or retention issues. So where you see positions placed in your report, there may be some changes in that. It won't have a big impact to the overall cost of implementation for the county, but positions, it always is fluctuating, based on requirements of positions and market conditions as to where positions get placed. But based on what you have in your packet, there are 37 employees non-represented employees whose current wage falls below the minimum of their proposed wage scale. The annual cost to bring those 37 employees to the minimum of their scale is about $26,000. Then looking at the other employees whose wage falls within the proposed wage range, to move them onto the step that's closest to their current wage without any employees seeing a decrease in pay, that cost is just over $202,000 for a total cost of $228,000. This will increase market comparability of certain positions, and it addresses the internal equity of the compensation of your non-represented positions. So we have 231 total non-represented employees. As I said, 37 are below the minimum, 179 are within range, and there are 15 employees whose current wage is above the proposed maximum for their range. Of the 37 employees that are below range, they're in 10 positions within the county. The 15 above, that's 14 positions within the county. So for moving employees to the minimum or to the next step, it's an average of a 2% increase for employees. The smallest increase is a 0.13%. The largest increase is about 44%. That sounds large, but most of those are very part-time positions, so the total dollar amount for those is very small. Then once you adopt, how do you then maintain this system? You'll need to look at establishing guidelines for how you're going to maintain the system. Once you adopt the compensation plans and employee wages in normal economic times will move on an annual basis. So how do you move it? You can look at what is the CPI at any given time. Those organizations that you've selected that you feel are comparable, so it's your market, what are they doing for general wage increases for positions within their organization? Other economic indicators. So those are the types of things you'd need to look at for administering and maintaining the system moving forward. And then again, looking at adjustments that recognize individual employee performance. We also, as a part of this, did a review of your fringe benefits. Your fringe benefits basically are very consistent with what other organizations are doing. Holiday leave is consistent. You have a paid time off policy in St. Croix County rather than the traditional sick leave and annual leave. There was only one other organization that reported having a PTO policy rather than separate sick leave and vacation leave, and your policy was consistent with what that other organization was doing. Health insurance, your cost is lower than the other organizations that reported. Your percentage contribution, but then again your cost is consistent with other organizations, and basically most of your other benefit levels are consistent with what other organizations are doing. So at the conclusion of this, what the goal was on this was developing a fair and equitable compensation to employees, also making sure that we had position descriptions that were an accurate reflection of positions as they exist today in the county, looking at addressing internal equity. So again, positions that are comparable to one another are compensated at comparable levels, but they're also competitive out in the marketplace. Establishing a market position that's fiscally responsible with public resources, and we all know that we have less public resources and finances than we did a couple of years ago, so that becomes a little bit more difficult. And then looking at administration of your policies moving forward and maintaining this system into the future. And at that, I'll open it up to questions, comments. Yes.
My first question is, Springstead has been dealing with this for 8 years, obviously. My question is, getting to the basics, does Springstead have any history of a successful implementation of another Wisconsin county? Do you have a history of, because the structure of counties is complicated. Wisconsin is different than Minnesota. Minnesota is different than Iowa. My question is, do you have another experience, successful experience in another county in Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin,
I don't recall any, but I'd have to go back and look at our project list. We do,
Yep.
I'll take that as a no.
yeah.
Well,
But we do have experience,
here.
yeah, we do have experience doing counties all throughout the rest of the country. Minnesota, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Maryland, Kansas. So, counties are unique, but they're unique throughout the country. Yes.
Stated that you talked to the employees. Now, were these the non-union employees that you had the evaluations with, or was it with the union and non-union altogether?
All employees together. We did all positions within the county, both represented and non-represented. They were all invited to complete position analysis questionnaires. Also, we conducted about 60 individual job audits where we came back and we had one-on-one meetings with individual employees, and that also included both represented and non-represented employees. Yes.
How did you get to the point in January of 2008 to start over for the third time?
You want to address that, Chuck?
They didn't get to the point, we got to the point, we had gone through an effort to try to do this internally, figuring that annually we have to maintain a system of some sort. We had tried to put together a group of department heads utilizing Springstead staff, hiring a classification compensation specialist position. The board added the human resources administrator position, and we went through a series of meetings with board representation and tried to work through a lot of the internal questions, the pointing in particular, the accuracy of job descriptions. And I don't want to say it failed, because I think we learned a lot doing it, but it became apparent we weren't going to be able to present a coherent plan and administer it internally. So we ended up getting rid of the classification compensation specialist position, going back to the finance committee, and going back to Springstead to try to do use a system, use them to be more the neutral party than what we were experiencing by having, staff, department heads, and board members involved.
Okay, then my next question, Chuck, is why did we start over the second time?
Second time we started over, we had been utilizing Springstead. We had committed to an open process so people could participate and understand what was going on. We got down to a point where it appeared that a grid was going to be brought forward, and there wasn't a lot of understanding of what was behind it. It was not something that was viewed by staff, department heads, as having been as open as we would like. And we ended up not only starting over, but changing staff as well.
Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, and I'll just ask the first at this time. When was the current study completed, and were its findings and conclusions incorporated into the 2010 budget?
This current study was concluded in November of 2009.
I'll try to answer that, Buzz. What was put into the budget for 2010 was a percentage increase based on the total non-rep compensation. What Ann presented here was an attempt to note changes that Springstead's study suggested, incorporate those changes specifically for their findings, while still changing a majority of the positions within that budgeted amount. I'm trying to remember the exact budget amount. 259. There's what they are proposing to make the changes are within the 200. Within that, it's, I think you said 228,000.
228, and there was 259 available, and then there's some additional between the 228 and the 259 for any other changes for individual positions based on market conditions, et cetera. So there's a little bit of extra.
There's an assumption that there will need to be changes, and so some funds are left for that in the proposed resolution from Finance.
John?
What would be the definition of non-represented employees and represented employees? That way we would all know there.
Non-represented employees are your non-union employees. Represented employees are your union positions covered by contracts.
Peter?
It's regrettable that 7 of the 11 respondents to your survey, 58%, are what I consider outside of our geographical area. And I'm wondering if you gave more weight to the jurisdictions that did respond that are closer, like Ramsey and Washington County?
No, we didn't, because what we do when we look at this is we review the responses for each individual position. So what are the other organizations responding? And if the responses are consistent with one another, regardless of, whether it's Dunn County or Washington County, if the responses are consistent with one another for the same position, we don't do any further analysis. Those that don't appear to be consistent, we take them out of the mix. So we didn't really weight anybody based on whether it was Washington County. We really look at the consistency of the information that we receive back.
So you think that Dunn County, Barron County, Dane County, Sheboygan County are all competing with our job market here?
Not necessarily, maybe for some positions. In Washington County and Ramsey County, they're competing for some positions, but not all positions. So we really just look at the consistency of the information. Would we have rather been coming to you with responses from all 22 of the organizations that we wanted information from? Yes, but we tried multiple occasions to get responses from the other organizations, and we were unsuccessful. So at some point, you just have to say we need to move forward with the information that we've got.
One last question. It was pointed out to us earlier that there's some people that would be going downward in their pay grade from 13 to 8. What would your recommendation be, that we would freeze their current salary compensation until the pay range caught up with them?
There's a couple of different things you can do where employees' wage is outside of the range, it's above the range. You can freeze their base wage until the base wage catches up with where their current wage is. You can do, some lump sum payments for individual employees, so they're getting, say, a 2% lump sum that's not added to their base wage. So there's a few different ways that you can deal with individual employees. Individual employees, they're not paid above their proposed wage range. It's not through the fault of their own. So, you look at, what are the available funds? How do we want to, as a county, deal with all employees who may fall outside of their range? So it's kind of a policy decision as to how you deal with that.
Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I understand you, Ann, to say that years of service, job performance, and educational requirements were not considered in working through this new grid?
It's not considered in the job evaluation. So the points of the position, we don't look at years of service of the individual. When we look at job evaluation points, it's based on the requirements of the position. So if there's a bachelor's degree required of the position, if there's 5 years of previous work experience required of the position, that's taken into consideration for pointing, but not years of service in the position for pointing purposes. We look at years of service of an employee when we look at how we move the employee into the proposed wage scale, but not on pointing.
On the surface, it seems to me that that's a disincentive to employees. Is that a correct observation, or am I missing something?
No, because when you're looking at the job evaluation, it's based on what's in the job description. So what are the essential functions of the position? What are the education and experience requirements of the position? How much prior work experience is required of the position? Those are the minimum requirements of the position. So you use that to point the position. Then you look at years of experience of an employee. That's how they then moved through the wage scale that's been assigned to the position. So you've kind of got two different things. We've got the job description and the points, which are position-based, and the rate of pay for an individual employee within the range for that position based on years of experience.
The other piece I have to be clear is that the job requires a bachelor's degree, and the person in the position has a master's degree. The master's degree isn't given any additional credit because it's not required of the position. I want to be clear because you asked that question. I think that was going to your initial question. And so if being the county coordinator, your position description says must have a bachelor's degree in public administration, and Chuck has a master's, he wouldn't get any additional credit for that master's because that's not required of the position. On the other hand, if you said the position requires a master's degree, then that level of education will be included in the evaluation.
Correct. And on the other side of that, if the position requires a bachelor degree, but you have an employee in the position who's been with your organization for a long period of time, has moved up for the ranks, and may only have a high school diploma or a 2-year degree, they're in that position, it's going to be evaluated for a bachelor's degree, even though the current incumbent does not have one. So it works both ways.
Esther, you had a question.
And the SAFE system that you used in 2008 to do this thing for us is different than the SAFE system that we started with in 2002. Is that not right?
That is correct. I mean, the foundation of the system is the same, but it has been updated. We've added another skill level. We've added more work characteristics. We've made changes in technology, changes in the different types of positions that you find in the public sector that you didn't used to find in the public sector. So yeah, we have made a lot of changes to the system since it was used the previous time in St. Croix County.
Well, I believe at the time we first started with the SAFE system, there were several areas, now there are 9 areas, but there were several of those areas that were weighted more heavily than others to achieve the points and the pay grades. And that has now been changed entirely.
Yes.
Now, you have done our job descriptions, and you have those available for us to see now?
They will be available. We made all the changes. We went through and we did the market survey. We've been concentrating on getting the rest of this out. We're going to do a final review of the job descriptions just to make sure that we got all the recommended changes in there, review for typos, etc., and then they will be available for the county shortly.
So they will be back before we meet on February 23rd?
Yes.
Is that my understanding?
Yes.
I also have one more question. For people who were at a certain level and now suddenly have found themselves drop down several grades in their employment, and they move from one part of our county into a different job, but basically the same job, they were social workers. How does this happen? I mean, I don't understand. To me, it's very foreign because working with the original SAFE system where education and or all the other things were there, it bothers me that we can have people downgraded 3 different levels.
Now there were a lot of organizational changes in that department at the very tail end of the study. So back in July when we got the revisions, we had sent the original job descriptions to the county in September of 2008. We received recommended revisions to those in July of 2009, and there were some organizational changes that took place as a part of that. And for some of those positions that there was an organizational change, we received some suggested and proposed revisions to job descriptions, but not an additional PAQ. So we may need to revisit some of those positions, but that's why I said where positions are assigned in this system, if requirements change or market conditions change, positions can move up and down grades in that system. So as Chuck and I have already discussed, and with Tammy we've discussed, now that we've got this non-union proposed wage scale, there may be some positions that move up or even down based on changes that have taken place since that time.
Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not certain that I'm correct about this, so I'll just throw it out for discussion. But in reference to Supervisor Marzolf's memo, I think, being that I serve on the ADRC committee, my understanding is that the three positions that are now called information and assistance specialists are not required by Wisconsin state law that the Department of Health that supervises this ADRC. They're not required to be social workers or even have a bachelor's degree. And I don't know if that played into the lowering of their pay scale, but I think it might have.
If that is indeed the case, and I don't have a copy of it right now, but if that indeed is the case where in the position they were in previously they were required to have a bachelor's degree, and now due to the reorganization the new position is only required to have an associate's degree, that would account for a change in the level of the position. But I don't have the job description in front of me, so I couldn't say specifically.
I believe those positions, however, in some of the discussions that we've had on them, not part of the Springstead, the county's view is that they're equivalent of social workers. We've been making that argument, and we'll probably want to make sure that that's properly reflected in these positions.
First, Lauren, you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. I guess a two-part question. I noticed on some of the responses from other communities that you had listed the administrative coordinator position, and there was like 9 respondents, and we're looking at salary ranges. Did you designate, because under state statute, there's 3 different styles of coordination. There's a county executive, county administrator, and administrative coordinator. Was that defined, because some of these salaries don't jive with my information. Did you designate this an administrative coordinator, not a county executive?
Yes.
Some of those municipalities have county administrators and city administrators, not coordinators.
Yes. As I said earlier, when we sent out our survey, we sent out a summary of the position description in the county, so we sent it out as an administrative coordinator, and some of the information that came back, yes, was for a higher level position, and that information we take out of the analysis. So any information that is not for a comparable position, we don't use in the analysis. So we got 9 responses. That doesn't mean we use the information for all 9 in analyzing the data, because if we have a county manager in Ramsey County, that's not necessarily comparable to an administrative coordinator in St. Croix County, and the wage is going to be substantially different. So in those cases, we take that information out of the analysis.
The second part of my question is, obviously without the job descriptions, it's hard for us to determine whether or not we feel or not they're accurate or not. And of course, the job descriptions I have, and somewhere from 2005, from when I was a department head here, and somewhere as recently as 2007, a lot of them vary a lot. And without having the updated job descriptions, I guess my general question is, did you question the accuracy of some of the duties and responsibilities around here? Because some of these job descriptions have duties and responsibilities that don't even exist in the county.
Well, as I said, we started from scratch in 2008.
On whose information?
We got initial information from the employees, filled out the position analysis questionnaire. The supervisors then reviewed and provided input regarding the position. The department heads then reviewed those. Then it went to Human Resources, who did another review of the position. So we got a lot of input along the way. There were a lot of steps and a lot of people that reviewed it to try and ensure that things did not go in job descriptions that were not an accurate reflection of the position. Then we developed preliminary job descriptions, and if things that we saw in the questionnaires, with our knowledge of other positions, if it raised a red flag, we did a job audit. We got further information from Human Resources, from the department head. We interviewed the employee so that we made sure that we really had descriptions that accurately reflected the position. Then we sent draft position descriptions back for review by all of the same people, and there was a very long review of all of these, and then they sent us back revisions. And again, we got those revisions, and again, if there were things that we looked at in them that we didn't feel belonged in a position, we then again questioned whether that was something that actually belonged in the position description, whether the employee was actually performing those duties, or whether that was a requirement of the position. So we did a very extensive review period of these.
Steve?
Thank you, Board Chair. I just have, I guess, about 3 questions, and I'll loop it all together here. The first one was, looking through this, I don't see where you've used any comparison to the private sector. And I was kind of curious why that wasn't done. Everything listed in here is with another private or a public job, and we do draw from the private sector for a job. That's one. When you talk about the market salary, and that leads back to checking it against the private sector, how do you, if you're looking at market, how do you define a range if you're only looking at one class of people, being the public sector? You talk about maintaining the scale. Again, it would seem we need to include the private sector, and I'm assuming you guys do this same survey for private sector jobs as well.
No, we do not.
You do not? Okay.
We don't work for the private sector, but that doesn't mean that we don't ever gather information from the private sector. In the times that we have requested information from the private sector, 99% of the time we don't ever get any information back. It's not public information. They're not very willing to share their information. Okay. So most of the time we don't request it because we don't get it. Number 2, most of the positions, well, a lot of the positions in the county are not going to have a comparable position in the private sector. You're going to have your administrative support, some of your finance positions, some of your maintenance positions you're going to find out in the public sector, but you've got a lot of positions that are just unique because you're a county and the services that the county provides. But one of the biggest reasons is they don't share.
Okay.
Very rarely. Even though we say we'll only refer to you as Company A, Company B, Company C, nobody will ever know. They really are just not willing to share in the times that we've tried.
Okay. And my last question is, could you explain for the board and for our benefit, explain the step process. To what point, what time an employee gets that step pay grade or pay increase? You've taken it from did we hear a 5 to a 9 is what we're going to, and explain how, for the viewing public, how that when an employee qualifies for a step increase,
okay,
versus a pay grade increase.
Right. I think we went from non-represented were 7. They were typically 7 steps, which is at the long end of any of the scales in the county. We have some that are 6, a couple that are 5, and some where there are no steps. Market survey information said that it was 11 steps. in discussions and reviewing information, we felt that going from 7 to 11, when all of the union employees were going to be at 6 or less steps, that 9 was a more appropriate number. As far as movement between the steps, say you hire an employee at step 1. Movement through the steps really is a part of each individual organization's pay philosophy. Some may have a 6-month probationary period so that an employee would move from step 1 to step 2 upon completion of their probationary period. Others, if it's a year, it's going to be after a year of employment and they pass their probationary period, they would move to the next step. Steps are typically on an annual basis. Some organizations do it on calendar year just because it's easier for their payroll department to administer it. A lot of others do step increases based on an employee's anniversary date. So they would move to the next step based on their anniversary date, based on satisfactory performance, if they have a performance as a component of that. And then they would get any increase to the step based on a change in the scale at the beginning of the fiscal year.
So we've I'm assuming your study is suggesting to the board that we will give every employee a 3.8% step increase on that annual basis, or whatever the step is. But it's pretty much non-negotiable. It's 3.8.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to go back to Supervisor Norton Bauman's question regarding the social work degree, and first of all, ask her to repeat that question, and then not to put them on the spot if they are here, but if there's anyone here from the ADRC who could speak to that question, I would ask for permission to let them be heard.
There isn't anyone here that I see from the ARD.
Yes, there is.
What's the question of her then?
My first question is to ask Sharon Norton Bauman.
Turn on your microphone, please.
My first question is to ask Supervisor Norton Bauman if she would repeat her question with regard to the social work degree that these three women have, and then, without putting them on the spot, I would ask a representative of that group or of the ADRC to kindly fill us in and answer Supervisor Norton Bauman's question.
Sharon, would you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'll do my best. My concern and my question was, perhaps there's a discrepancy between what is required in the job of information and assistance specialist in the ADRC unit and the education or experience that the current incumbents have in those positions, and perhaps that would be a reason that there would be such a discrepancy in where they're placed on the pay grid. Is that clear?
Okay, now would you answer the question? Back there, Gal, whoever you are.
Before she comes up, I might add, Mr. Chair, that I personally do believe that the incumbents in these positions having social work degrees and experience has been invaluable in the operation and expedition of the startup of the ADRC. So I'm not questioning the fact that they have social work degrees. I'm just questioning where they're supposed to fit on the grid under the requirements for the positions.
My name is Sia Westfall. I'm a long-term county employee and one of the information and assistance specialists in the ADRC. We were never given an opportunity in our new position to do a PAC. We did do that PAC at long-term support as long-term support social workers. So first of all, it would be important to actually have us do that process. I don't know why that was missed, but it was missed. A social work degree is not technically required by the state of Wisconsin only because in other ADRCs, the state wanted to give those ADRCs flexibility to hire their long-standing competent employees. However, to do our functional assessments, a bachelor's degree is required. And that's the long-term care functional screen is the functional eligibility tool that then allows us to do a screening to see if somebody is eligible to go to Community Health Partnership or IRIS. The other important thing to consider is that information and assistance is just one part of our job. The title is not very descriptive. We also do options and enrollment counseling. We do all the youth transitions for kids turning 18 from the children's waiver to adult waivers, including their guardianship petitions, short-term case management, crisis management, and a whole host of really social work activities. So the state of Wisconsin doesn't require a social work degree, but they do require a bachelor's degree. And that's not reflected in the information because it wasn't ever provided to Springstead for some reason. Sure.
Are they requiring certification as a social worker?
The county asked at the time of hire. See, when the long-term support unit closed, the county had more social workers than positions. So actually it was very competitive. So the county was able to pick, in my estimation, biased estimation, the cream of the crop. So some people went to go work for the nonprofit care maintenance organization. So the county required that degree at the time of hire, but the state didn't require it. So.
Mr. Austin.
Chuck, in regard to this, when we combine the two departments, for instance, in this young lady's job description that she had, I'm assuming when she was in New Richmond, did that just follow her down here to the ADRC, or was she given a new job description along with the new requirements?
I believe there's a new job description because I know in another context we've had discussions about this, and when I say another context, I'm talking about something totally different than Springstead. And why I said earlier that I believe the county's position is that these positions have bachelor's degrees. But I'd have to see what we've got on file. If something is missed, then clearly, the pointing of the positions will be different.
Yeah, if the revisions that came based on the reorganization that was done, we got a lot of revisions for position descriptions based on the reorganization that was done. And if that came through and it changed the position description from a bachelor's degree to an associate's degree or some other change, that would account for the change in that. And if that is not accurate, then we revise that job description, we repoint, and then we reassign the position within the compensation plan.
I think that becomes the statement that we talked about once before. If there is a problem some area, we will take a look at the correction of that issue. I don't think we're going to solve the problems here this morning, totally. We need to look at them on a long-term basis.
Well, just for a point of clarification, the last job description for these ladies is dated March of 2008 when the ADRC came about, and it does require a bachelor's degree at that point. Whether or not the new one isn't, but as of now, it does require it, and I think it should be considered.
Yeah, we received revisions to all of those in July of 2009. So we would need to see what the change if there was a change between May of 2008 and what the revisions that came to us in July of 2009 were.
Mr. Peterson, you had a question.
Excuse me, it's my understanding we're going to have a meeting on February 23rd to discuss this issue. Is that correct? Okay. then if that is true, Corp Counsel, I'd like to postpone the discussion of this issue until the 23rd.
Not up to me. Making that a motion, are you?
Yes, because in all fairness, I think Springstead is here to provide us with all kinds of information, and then we're going to devote an entire meeting to discussing it.
Is there a second to
So I
that?
move that.
Is there a second to that motion? There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second to it? Is there a second to it? Motion is seconded. That stops discussion, am I right?
This is the end debate. Two-thirds. End debate or discussion, yeah. Okay, non-debatable, two-thirds vote required.
Okay, we're going to go to keep it correct, we're going to go to roll call vote. Yes is to yes is to postpone, no is not to postpone.
Ready, Linda Lucky?
Verification, what are we voting on?
End debate.
Yes is to end debate.
Yes. Well, it's the end debate. Yes is to end the debate. No is otherwise. Okay? What did Linda say?
I'm sorry, Linda. No. Ryan Seacard? Dan Rabel?
No.
Alfred Trank?
No.
Julie Spear? Joe Hurchin?
Yes.
Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Greg Telejohn?
No.
Roger Larson? Richard King?
No.
Frederick Horn?
No.
John Mortensen?
No.
Esther Wentz?
No.
Jean Ritz?
No.
David Peterson?
No.
David Asnes?
No.
Lauren Sather?
No.
Richard Marzoff?
No.
Sharon Norton Bowman?
No.
Peter Post?
No.
Roger Rebholz?
Yes.
Daryl Standifer?
No.
John Borup?
No.
Clarence Malick? Steve Hermson?
No.
Kenneth Colby?
No.
Cindy Leonard?
So there's 5, so that would be 20.
There's 29 present now because Greg Telejohn is here.
So 20, 24 to 5. To not end the debate. Okay, John?
Thank you. When I heard the supervisor behind me here speak about it's a 3.8% increase, and whoa. And I know a major employer here in the valley, right along the river, that has big layoffs right now. And they did not pay 2 dividends in 2009, and here we're giving pay raises. That's the comment. What is the cost of the past study and up to date for the Springstead study?
Honestly, don't know. I have to go back and look that up.
I believe it's $106,000 or $107,000 spread out over 3 years, and this would be the third year.
Buck?
Mr. Chairman, supervisors should recall that our typical pattern for a long time was to have a grid in which every employee got a step with an additional year until they reached the top of their grade. And in addition, the county would have a 1.5% or a 2% raise kind of thing added to it. So, Mr. Mortensen, it's not quite as dramatic as you have indicated. This is not a significant change, at least for this year, this proposal, compared to what we've done in past years. In our budget that we passed in November, we provided this amount of money to be allocated to the non-union employees. And this proposal is one way of doing it, which moves us closer to a rational grid system, updating our ancient hay process.
Mr. Colby?
Yeah, being former federal government retiree, I just did a real quick number, and I kind of multiplied it out. The numbers that we use are almost identical to what is the federal government pay scale in Minneapolis, give or take. My curious question is why do we need 250 different things in it when the federal government, which I think is a little more complicated, only has 150? Can you elaborate on why it's broken down so minutely?
What are you referring to as far as the 250?
Well, you have, 28 grades, right?
Correct.
And there's 9 spaces. That comes out to 250 different locations in it. Federal government only has 15 grades, and they have 10 steps within there, so they use only 150 of them, and I'm kind of assuming that federal government's a little more complicated as far as their layout, and I'm not quite sure how we need so many things to define, what do we have, a total employee number? Several hundred compared to, 3 million?
Well, for this group, there's 231, I believe, in here. And what we've done with this is, because we want to have wages that are competitive out in the marketplace, we want to have a system that's fiscally responsible with public funds, and have positions that are compensated internally comparable to others. So if you have fewer grades in there, you're going to have some positions that are going to be compensated at a lot lower level than in other organizations, and you're not going to be able to retain or recruit employees into that, or you're going to have positions that are, going to be very highly compensated relative to the market and relative to positions within. So if you compact that down, you're not going to have positions that are being compensated relative to the market or relative to other positions within the organization.
I guess just having worked in multiple different states for the federal government, I never really ever saw that, and that was why I was wondering how micromanaging sizes works better.
And actually, in a lot of organizations, I've been in organizations where they've had more grades than this, but they've also had, 20-some steps in there. So they actually get more laid out than this. And the organizations that we compare to out in the marketplace, they actually had about the same number of grades and more steps. So we actually brought it down from what was going on in the organizations that we used as our comparisons.
Cindy?
I have 2 questions. So we have some errors. What happens to these errors? Are they going to be reanalyzed before there's any vote taken on it? And then secondly, these ideas of steps are just a pattern or a model, but during the economy and the budget approvals, they're not necessarily set in stone. Is that correct?
That would be correct. You have steps so that, employees have a way to get from the minimum to the maximum as established by the market and internal comparisons. But yes, during, the current economic times or when we've had other ones, organizations deal with their budgetary crisis differently. Sometimes employees will get a step increase, but the scale won't change. Other times the scale will change, so the employee may get a cost of living increase, but they won't get their step increase. Other times there have been wage freezes, so employees don't get a step increase or they don't get a cost of living increase. So, it varies dependent on the organization, dependent on the available funds, dependent on the organization's pay philosophy. So, there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Mr. Standifer?
What's in front of us right now comes as a result of discussion on the non-represented pay plan for 2010, and when we adopted the budget, we indicated that we put a placeholder number in contingency. Only for purposes of how did we arrive at the placeholder number will I use this percentage, because it didn't relate to anything else, but it equaled about 2.5%. That was simply put in contingency so that we had the room to do this. Back up in your mind a year, and what we did in the previous year was to provide a one-time lump sum amount to our non-represented employees of $520 in lieu of a percentage adjustment. But the $520 was given to an employee who was not also going to have a step. And if an employee was in the grid and was moving through the grid, and in that year was going to have a step increase, that employee did not get the lump sum amount. We have a high percentage of our employees, and I don't remember the exact number, you can throw that out if you remember it, but we have a high percentage of our employees who are at the top of the range. So they're already at the top step. And the top of the range that we have in front of you with the 11 step is almost identical to the top of the range that we have now in the 7 step. The ranges did not change. So an employee that's at the top of their range right now would still be at the top of their range, would not get a salary increase. We've only lengthened that out a little bit.
You had a second part to your question.
Yeah, what happens with the situation with the ARDC position? Is that
Well,
going to be relooked at?
What we did with this, and in part of our discussions, is that positions will move within your compensation plans. What we're really looking at is adopting the compensation plan, knowing that, based on a couple of questions that have arisen now, and as positions change, that positions will change grades within there. There may be a small change in the implementation, but it would still stay within the funds that are available for implementation for the non-represented employees. So you're really looking at the system, this is the 9-step system, this is the number of grades, this is approximately where positions and employees are going to fall into that system. There's always some fine-tuning going on based on changes in positions. So, that may change the implementation a bit by re-reviewing a couple of the positions where there have probably been some changes since this started, and to make sure that they're placed correctly, but it's not going to have a major impact on the cost. It's not going to change the compensation system, simply where a position is placed within that system and where an individual salary moves to.
Alfie, you had a question.
My question is, there are 28 grades, right? Are we going to get a list of the grades so we know which people fit in each grade?
You do have that in your report for where the positions currently fit. I think it's appendix. It's appendix D, where the positions fall. It's hard to look at, but that's where the positions currently fall, and that's sorted both by department and by grade assignment.
Buck, you had a question.
I did, and you're the expert in designing these systems. I think a number of us are wrestling with the idea of when should we look at repointing positions. We've had some discussion, and there's a possibility that we've got some position descriptions that aren't at this moment pointed correctly. They haven't been looked at just recently, and the job has changed. In a good, well-administered personnel system, how frequently are changes entertained and considered?
Typically, they're considered if there is a major change to the position. So if there is a major change in the level of responsibility that's required by a change in the essential functions, if there is a change in the required educational level or experience level, or if there's a change in, are there additional licensures, et cetera, that are required of the position. So if there's a major change to a position, it should be looked at for, do the evaluation points of the position are based on this change, do the points of the position change, and if the points of the position change, does that then warrant a change in grade? if an employee is required to complete an additional financial report and they're also already doing a number of financial reports, that does not constitute a major change in a position, so there should be no re-review of the job evaluation points. If you have a position that is, if you're needing to recruit somebody into a position, some organizations will do a re-review based on that time when they need to recruit somebody. Are there any changes that we need to make to the position description to make sure it's up to date and accurate? And if there are changes to that, does it change anything in the job evaluation points? So those are the times when you want to look at them. Most organizations do not say, we're going to look at this many positions at this time of year, this many. Those that do, I had one organization that decided that they were going to review 25% of all positions every year, and every year for those positions, it just created a lot of upheaval because employees started to worry because not only do changes in positions, changes in requirements, it doesn't always warrant an increase in points. Sometimes it warrants a decrease in points, and then you've got employees who then are being overcompensated. So when there's major changes or upon recruitment is when I recommend that positions be reviewed.
Lauren?
And I agree with that. For 6 years, we've been hearing that we should review our job descriptions every year once we get a plan in place. I contended over and over again that a job description is basically a thumbnail sketch of your duties and responsibilities. And so I agree with 100% that unless there's a change in essential functions of that position, it doesn't need to be addressed until, again, you need recruitment or replacement.
Mm-hmm. That's typically what I recommend. Or if you have an established performance evaluation system where an employee is being evaluated on the essential functions of their position, you can always do just a brief review of it during that performance evaluation to see if anything has been changed. But to just on an annual basis review your job descriptions and see if anything needs to be changed.
Steve?
Because they're not all encompassing. Everything that an employee does is not in a position description. It's a summary of the major essential duties that they do. It's not a task analysis of everything they do from the time they walk in the door in the morning and flip on the light switch till the time they walk out and flip the light switch back off.
Thank you, Board Chair. I guess I want to come back to this step issue just one more time. Darrell, I'd like to thank Supervisor Stanifer for explaining this in that shortening from the 11-step that we had previously to the 7-step that we're going to... No. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going 7 to 9.
Yes, we are.
Then, well, I'll still thank Supervisor Stanifer. The question is, though, on the step process, noticing on the wage scale the way it goes, it shows that as each step prolongs, you end up going from the minimum of the wage scale for that grade to the maximum. So regardless of performance, after the 7th, I'm getting myself confused, 9-step process, they're suggesting 7.
Proposing 9.
We're going from 7 to 9, but after 9 steps, you will be at the maximum wage scale for a position, for a pay grade. And I would question that a little bit in thinking that normally performance should be what drives you to the top of the wage scale from midpoint. At least that's the way it works in the private sector. What I would maybe suggest is that through the step process, that it would only take you to midpoint instead of all the way to the top of the scale. That's just something I'm kind of thinking is that because the step process seems to come automatic. It's just almost a rubber stamp. Oh.
Yeah, and that's why during, during the presentation and during this discussion, I have been discussing, performance as a part of this. Just because you have a step system doesn't mean that it has to be an automatic step increase for an employee based on just their longevity within an organization. But that, again, is a part of establishing your overall pay philosophy. Are you going to have performance as a component of your compensation plan? And that's something that you can do with your non-union employees, make performance a requirement of progressing through that pay range, but then you have to be willing to say, okay, if an employee is not performing up to expectations, we're going to withhold a step increase, and if you have an employee who's an exceptional performer, you may want to increase them more than one step. That's something that would be a lot more difficult to implement with your union contracts, because it's very difficult to negotiate a performance-based component into a union contract, but it is something that you can do with your non-represented employees.
Esther?
Would it be possible for our meeting on February 23rd to have some of the items that have been run off for us to be in a little larger print? It's very hard when you want to look at something, and I know I'm old and I have bad eyesight, but I really think if we could have this in a larger format, maybe on 11 by 14, if that could be possible. Impossible, the one that you had with the red up there that showed the differences between who's above and who's below, if that would be possible for us to see also. I think those would be things that would help us in aiding making our decision. Thank
Absolutely. Yeah, when you fit it into a report, it's kind of hard to fit all the information in and actually make it viewable. I pull out my little readers.
Well, this has been a good discussion. I think we need to start thinking about closing it down, because we've got a lot of things going on here
One
today.
parting shot.
Lauren?
I just got one parting shot across the bow. I guess I'm looking at the employees that were within the range of the impact summary of 179 to 231. So about 80% are currently within that range, which means that where they're at now in the old study wasn't that far off. We spent an awful lot of money experimenting with, again, a company that hasn't done it in Wisconsin County before. And I think it'd be interesting for the supervisors to look at, here's my parting shot, at for the most part, not all of them, but some of them that are getting the larger increases in salary and their interaction with other people in the county. Look at it.
But I will say, Lauren, that I went through this 35 years ago in the private sector, doing exactly the same thing. And an awful lot of the same questions floated here today that floated then. And that program worked like a charm once people got accustomed to the program.
Did it take 8 years to get to
It took a long time, I'll tell you that. Okay, that's it. We appreciate your discussion. We look forward to additional discussion on the 23rd, if you can do that.
Absolutely.
Can we get some job descriptions?
They will be coming.
We are going to take a 10-minute break, or I'm going to blow up. We are going to take a 10-minute break. Yeah. Oh, excuse me, before we take the break, we do need to address resolution number 8. And John's got to leave, and John is the chairman of that group, so we should take care of that before we take a little break. That resolution is disapproving a new position to begin in 2010, Emergency Management Director, promotion to postpone at the December 15th County Board meeting. Darrell, you will bring it to the floor?
I'll move approval. If there's a second, then I'll have John discuss it. We can dispose of this real quick.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to discuss it. Any discussion on this motion?
Communications was moving in line with the downsizing of the full county board and the movement, the proposal rather, for the Emergency Management Communications departments to be under the Public Protection Committee. We were looking at merging, which I still haven't found a better word for it, but it's merging together a larger department with a smaller department. Initially, I think it was back in late October, it was supported 5-0. Committee members changed their vote 3-2 against it. And at the January 5th committee meeting, voted unanimously to have a study done by Buck Rhymes, the gentleman who did the ADRC study, and I think did it successfully for the county. And we, at this point, have work sessions with Mr. Rhymes on February 2nd and February 12th. If anybody wants any more credential data on Mr. Rhymes, I think, Chuck, you would be the person. But it's been a contested issue by the committee, and with all due respect, the committee has 5 county board members as well as numerous community members from the various service fields, and there's been a lot of concern about Jack Colvard's retirement. Jack is going to be going away sometime this March or April, and so we, at least some of us, and we've gone back and forth with it, have been in favor of taking a look at, with the downsizing of the committee structure, of whether there would be advantages to bring those two departments together. So we have those meetings set up on April 2nd. The second meeting will be the February 2nd meeting will be out at our county facility in Baldwin. February 12th meeting is scheduled for the morning here in the courthouse. Darrell, do you have any comments for finance you want to add to it? Okay. So I would make a motion to table this pending those work sessions.
Two of them sign. Okay. You got a motion and you've had some discussion. Any additional discussion on this?
I'm sorry, is your microphone on, John?
Merging the programs together, the balance, the other 3 members, Dave Osnes, Julie Spear, John Mortensen, voted against it.
How did the votes go on this resolution?
Oh, for the Finance Committee.
For the Finance Committee.
Originally, this was unanimous. This was 5-0.
We were going to bring it up at this meeting. There's been a lot of misinformation on what we are doing here, and a lot of that is spread right out of here from some board members. The reason we do not have to approve an additional person for this position is that we're not going to hire an additional person. If we have our chance, we're going to hire we're going to hire somebody to replace Jack Colvard, and we'd like to take a guy like Casey Swetlick, move him in there to oversee both areas. We accomplished 2 things with that, and it's one of the things that's bothered me greatly. We have no backup for Jack Colvard if something happens to him. If he decides to retire tonight, he's done. Who do we fill in with him? Who knows anything about his job? If we had, yes, I'm right on top of it. If we had a person such as Casey who could learn that portion of the emergency management, he already has the expertise in the area of communications. We then have a backup. At least somebody knows where to go for information and to congregate people to get the job done. It was like we were taking out the 4 left teeth in my mouth when we made this decision. And I wasn't getting hurt at all. But the county would come up short if we go that way. And those people out there in the communities are not going to miss a beat, because we're still going to have an emergency manager spot. He may be called an emergency manager director. I don't know what we're going to call him. And we'll have the other side, the communications, but we'll have one guy to oversee the whole works. I see no reason why it won't work perfectly, and we just need to get that put together, and that's one of the reasons we're bringing a guy like Buck Rhyme in. Sharon.
Thank you. I'd just like to speak to the vote of the Finance Committee on this resolution. My remembrance is that we voted to not fill this position in deference to the Emergency Management Committee so that they could take another look at what they wanted to do, and we would understand that what they decided had been thoroughly vetted. So this is just simply coming from the Finance Committee saying, we're backing off on recommending this. We'd like to have the Emergency Management Committee take it up again.
John, you had your hand up.
Yes. I don't remember the dates, but it goes back to either late September or early October when the committee realized that Jack Covard was retiring, possibly the end of the year, in there. At the time, it was brought up that we wanted to combine. Well, at the next meeting, we started to hear from the services, the fire department, EMS, the police department, and others with the communication and training that Jack has provided with grants through the state, and he is training himself and through WITC. These services throughout the county have been saving money by getting the training from the state and so forth, and they're really concerned about losing a director. And I talked to Jack Covard at our last meeting, January 5th, which is about 2 weeks ago today. I said, would a deputy working 16 hours be of help to you? Yes, it would be greatly. And that's my plan for having a emergency management director be hired and a deputy of 16 hours.
2 meetings. I was just informed that I have that resolution. There was a motion to postpone that resolution last month, and what we should be doing today is to
There's another motion today to postpone.
Another motion to postpone. And so we're going to postpone it to March. By that time, these other meetings will be done, if that's what you would like to do. I would like to have a motion to postpone this until next March, or until March. It's already made?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second on
I
that.
didn't catch the motion. John did it, okay. Okay. All right. So the motion is on the floor and there's a second to postpone it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Against, the same way. Okay. Done. We're going to take about a 5 or 10 minute break. I've got to visit a room. Approving county board operation policies. Will someone bring that to the floor? Darrell brings it to the floor. Is there a second? Brian seconds it. Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve this resolution. I think Timmerman was going to be here to give us a hand because he was going to explain it, wasn't he? Where in the world did he go?
Out to lunch.
He's in trouble if he did, because he isn't going to explain it. Okay, then we'll have Greg take over and discuss this with us. I don't really think it's necessary for me to take over. I'd like to ask the board how they would like to proceed. If you'd want to go through the summary list first, or if you don't need to do that and you just have specific questions about the content of the proposed revised rules and bylaws that you have in front of you. One thing I could do while you contemplate that is to already point out some corrections that need to be made that might answer some questions. The first one would be on page 7, under the Public Protection Committee description. And I will thank Supervisor Osnes for pointing out to me that under paragraph B, the reference to Wisconsin statutes section 166.03 sub 4 sub C isn't good anymore, that the statutory chapter has been changed to 323, so that should read 323.14 in the second line, and then in the last line of paragraph B, that should also read 323.14, section 323.14. The next correction. We've already talked about that. But he doesn't want legal fees because, you know, unauthorized practice of law is a big deal in Wisconsin now. On page 15, which is part of the list of other organizations that the county's involved in, J is actually West Central Wisconsin Community Action Agency, Inc., Incorporated, so I would add Wisconsin after Central and INC period after agency, and then in parentheses I would propose to put West Cap, which is what is more commonly known as, I think, to all of us. I then, based on the appointment made this morning and the discussion that Supervisor Malick and Chair Rebholz had regarding the Western Wisconsin I-94 Corridor Coalition, I would make that L. Well, actually, I'd insert it above Wisconsin Counties Association, because they're alphabetized, actually. And then I'd make Wisconsin Counties Association M and Willow River Rehabilitation District N. And I believe that's one supervisor member, or one supervisor representative. Is that correct, Chair Rebholz? Right. Okay. And the contact committee would be transportation? All right. Well, the I-94 corridor?
Yeah, that's transportation.
All right.
Greg, were you going to do a couple on 14 also, E and E?
Yes, on page 14, sub E, Lower St. Croix Management Commission, should read Lower St. Croix Management Commission Partnership Team. And D, Intergovernmental Advisory Council, my understanding is that's the organization of Hudson government entities?
Well, no, the county, well, St. Joe Township, Hudson Township, North Hudson, and Troy Township. And the school board.
So apparently there's an Intergovernmental Advisory Council, and then there's a Hudson Area Intergovernmental Advisory Council. This one apparently should be the Hudson Area Intergovernmental Advisory Council, and I'm not sure if the county board has representation on that other organization or not. Does anybody know about that one?
Under its bylaws, it's entitled to it. That's a Western Wisconsin something. I'll have to dig that out and get it to you later for next month.
All right. That's all the corrections that I have to make at this time.
Yes, under C, Indian Head Federated Library System. And the first part is correct. And the members are, number is based on the county population. Since I think it was 2002 when there was a change took place after the last census, we got one of Chippewa's representatives. So we had 2 citizens, and I was the county board rep there. So we have 3 representation at this point.
I made that open-ended, John, because it doesn't have to be supervisors, it doesn't have to be citizen members, and it may change based on population, so I just left it that the appointments would be made pursuant to the state law that directs the membership. I also see in the second to the last line of that section, it should be toward the end of the second to the last line, it says /PR, and that should be /OR. Okay.
Thank you. A couple of other suggestions to make this good document better. On page 4, the very first 2 lines. Over on the right, it concludes, and those which are normally ascribed to the office, which includes, I think should be which include, because those is plural and include is plural. And then on page 5, I think if we insert a couple of commas in section B, the first following county board, and the second following county board meeting in the third line of B. And then I would just ask for a clarification on page 7, 4C. I just wrote clarify, please. Could someone clarify the intent of at least the 3 lines on that page?
Which one?
Page 7, 4C.
4C. There are 2 committees that the county is required to have. One under state law, which is the Emergency Management Committee, and that is a committee that deals with every disaster that might occur in the county, except the one for which
Greg, if I may just interrupt, it's a syntax question.
Oh.
In the middle of at the right end of the middle line of 4C, it says a committee that is required by 42 United States Code 11001.
There should be a comma after 11001. And after law, Superfund law, comma.
And what does 42 stand for?
42 is the volume of the United States Code book.
So volume 42?
Well, it always, that's how it's officially written. But it does refer to the volume of the book that it's in, yes.
All right, thank you. And then my last one on page 17. Item 6, right smack in the middle. I think if we put an apostrophe for board chairs to indicate the possessive board chair's decision, that would help.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a number of questions. Starting on page 6. On page 6, under section A, Public Protection Committee. Greg, right now, that's also going to be part of the Emergency Management Communication Committee, correct? We've switched over. We're going to be under Public Protection.
Emergency management will be under public protection, emergency communications will be under public protection, right?
Correct. The question I've got is with the 7 supervisors underneath there, and I think if you look in chapter 323, which is under the old 166, the county board chair is also a member of that committee. So is that going to change the elected supervisors to 6 rather than 7?
I don't think that's how the statute reads. It doesn't require the county board chair to be on it. It requires the county board chair to appoint the chair of that emergency management committee.
Okay.
Because we actually had to go through this once with somebody else in the recent past, and we both thought that's what was the requirement. And it turns out it's not. It doesn't require the county board chair to be a member.
But he would on the LEPC though, correct?
If that's how the LEP, some component of that committee would work, yes.
Okay, and while we're on the LEPC, on page 7, under 4C, because that's what you're describing is the LEPC, that should be a standalone committee, correct?
No.
Why?
Because we only have 5 standing committees now.
Well, okay, then a subcommittee. But it's of itself, and I don't see that anywhere in this document, where the LEPC committee, that's the only place that I see it here. Am I correct on that, Bob?
Yes.
There are a number of others that are that way also.
But it's okay the way it's worded here? Okay.
Long time ago.
Okay. On same page, on 7, under Health and Human Services, under B, it states the Health and Human Services Board oversees management of the buildings and grounds of the Public Health and Human Services Department in Richmond. Isn't that the duty of Public Services?
Building
services, I mean?
Building services it does the work, but it's overseen by the Health and Human Services Board, as opposed to the new administration committee, which oversees all other county property and buildings except transportation.
Okay. And then one more. Page 8. Under E, into the last paragraph, child support, emergency management, comma, I think you should take out the and insert emergency communications.
Yep. For the time being, that's right.
Okay. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. On page 7, number 3, under B, there's a disclaimer that says, except the county's agricultural land adjacent to the department. Would that indicate then that land would fall within the purview of the administration committee?
That has actually been assigned to the Land and Water Conservation Department.
I didn't find that in here.
Okay?
Maybe I missed it, Greg, but I didn't find it.
Community development it would be now, let's see.
Page 7.
Thanks.
I just didn't find this. I didn't find the assignment of that land.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I think it should be added in under the description for the Community Development Committee, that they manage the agricultural land at the health center.
It's on page 7, 3B, and that will go under community development. And one other simple question, I think. In our current manual, the taking of the minutes of these board meetings is assigned to the county clerk. That's not in this document as such. So my question is, by state statute, is the county clerk responsible for the minutes taking, and so it doesn't have to be stated?
Yes, that's been moved to the meeting section of the county board meetings part of the rules and bylaws.
But state statute also reflects that the clerk is responsible for the minutes of the board meetings.
It's on
Chapter 59.
It's on page 16, section B.
Thank you. I saw that. I just wanted clarification.
The reason-
Since it was moved from one section to another.
My rationale for moving it is that technically the county clerk isn't an officer of the board.
Right.
So I thought it was more appropriate to move it back to the meeting section.
Yeah, I have a question on page 8. It'd be in the first paragraph, line number 4. I'm just curious what the terminology first aid means. Is that something that is in the state statutes using the word first aid, or should that actually be something like EMS, because the others are defined as firefighter, civil defense? And just wanting to know what that means.
I'm not for sure on this, Ken, but I think that is the language out of the federal statute, where they identify the various disciplines that need representation.
Okay, and I just wasn't quite sure on that. Also,
Civil defense?
Hmm?
What civil defense? That's kind of an old...
No, civil defense is still out there, actually. And also another one, the terminology that's used in the Transportation Department is stated as committee as a policy-making body. And in none of the others, they use that same type of terminology. Is there a reason that the terminology was changed?
The Highway Department and Transportation Committee are kind of an entity unto themselves, and the statute specifically reads that way. Chapter 83 reads that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Chair. Greg, could you, somewhere here, I thought I saw on the Ethics Committee, falls under the administration, currently will fall under the Administration Committee, and I'm kind of wondering, is there any avenue in the event that, how that Ethics Committee would be made up for, since the Administration Committee is going to have quite a bit of power? How do we turn around then and given that an ethic complaint may be filed against the Administration Committee, how then is it determined who would serve on that?
I believe there's language in there that says the
It's on page 4
county
of
board.
the operations policies. At the bottom, page 4, operations policies.
Yeah, the county board chair will make appointments if bias or neutrality or it can't be achieved, or if the complaint is against that member of the administration committee.
And one other question is, since we're into the operations policy, on the very first page of that one, they have it listed underneath the per diem section B2, talking about the, for any meetings, function, or event attended within a county, a supervisor is entitled to receive a per diem as shown in subsection 1, only when the supervisor has been authorized. And I'm wondering if that's really a good word, because every supervisor is authorized to come to a meeting. So wouldn't it be better to be entitled? You're not?
Not to go to another committee's meeting and be paid for it.
No, but I understand that. So I'm saying, but a better word is, since every board member is well, you're authorized to show up. You're entitled. You're not entitled to get paid. Correct, but so I was just trying to say, to word that in such a way that if you were invited or requested to make an appearance, then you would then obviously be entitled to a per diem.
Authorization.
But not to put it out there, give it the impression that you're not authorized.
Oh, no, you can certainly attend the meeting. If you don't get that pre-authorization, you're not entitled to the per diem.
Correct, that's all I was trying to.
Yeah, I think that's how it reads.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the same document, operations policies, on the very last page, 6, I just would like a clarification about contracts. No mention is made of county board approval. It only speaks to the county board chair, the county clerk, and the administrative coordinator. Is county board approval required for the county entering into contracts?
No, and actually for the vast majority, if not every provision in the operations policy, the language is the same as it was previously.
Okay.
No, the county board isn't required to approve every contract.
Thank you.
Under operations policies, page 2, item 6, just a point of clarification is when it says payment per diem and expense reimbursement, does that refer to mileage?
Mileage and hotel and meals.
Okay. And then in the last paragraph, what's the rationale for the 90 days?
That has been a rule that was established by the county board, and if anybody is more conversant in that than I, which isn't going to take much, please fill in.
Been there for at least 2 decades. I think it's intended. Longer than I've been on board. The main purpose of it serves a useful function in being able to close the books at some reasonable time after the end of the year, and not having things last forever, and having the public be able to see how much people are getting paid. You know, if they could wait a whole year and 10 days, the public might not know on a timely basis. Sometimes they care. It also is in the nature of like statute of limitations. If there's ever going to be any questions about it, you get the questions surfaced while people still can remember the events. I think those are the 3 main reasons.
So it sounds like the main intent is to have the reporting done by the end of the fiscal year, not necessarily by the end of a quarter.
For that one reason, yes. The closing of the annual books, yeah. I suppose, you might encounter a situation sometime in which finances were really desperate and you wanted to say, county board members, we're going to have to bite the bullet and not have so many meetings because it's costing too much. Well, in that kind of a case, you'd want to have early, timely reporting of what it's costing.
And I'm just wondering if this would be an area where the supervisor could request less frequent payments, so that as long as our attendance is being recorded by our signature when we're in the meeting, that we would not have to be paid monthly if that's not our choosing.
I would like, Peter, to have Cindy handle that, because she's the one that has to do this work.
What I've suggested to the administration committee, and they approved it, is that we have sign-in sheets at meetings, so you will no longer have to submit the voucher for per diem requests unless you're attending a conference, something else, so another function that you would submit where you wouldn't have a sign-in sheet. So you will no longer, for the most part, will no longer have to submit the monthly per diem request forms. You'll be signing in at the meetings. The forms include round-trip mileage if you've attended another meeting on the same day, and if this goes through, would become effective in April.
Yeah, I have a quick organization question, Board Chair. And I understand, I'm looking at the Health and Human Services Board part of this sheet. The ADRC it's now called a subcommittee in these documents, is structured under the Health and Human Services Board. And as I recall, when this ADRC was put into function, there was some concern that the ADRC committee would be able to directly report to the county board. Now, I'm not questioning the integrity of the Health and Human Services Board. My understanding, though, is that the state requires that the ADRC be completely separate from any control by the Health and Human Services Board. If somebody thinks I'm all wet on that, please tell me.
I don't think you're all wet, so I'm not going to tell you that, but but I believe the Aging and Disabilities Resource Center is a department, so they can be under Health and Human Services. It's the Council on Aging and Disabilities that doesn't show up on this organization chart, but they are identified in the rules and bylaws as being that separate entity that advises, advocates, recommends services for the older people and adults with disabilities. They don't happen to appear on here. Perhaps it should be listed somewhere with a dotted line to Health and Human Services or something to that effect. But the ADRC department can be under Health and Human Services. The Council on Aging and Disabilities is that advisory board that advocates for older people and adults with disabilities. And they're listed separately as a subcommittee in the rules and bylaws.
That the Aging and Disabilities Advisory Committee is listed as a subcommittee? Is that what you just said?
The Council on Aging and Disabilities, yep,
Okay.
which is separate from the ADRC, which is the department.
Okay. It's still a subcommittee. Right?
Yes.
And that is in line with what the state requires for us to operate an ADRC, that our council be a subcommittee of the Health and Human Services Board?
They can act independently until they need to come to the county board for something. If they need a budget allocation or something, then they just work through the Health and Human Services Board to get access to the county board.
I'm only bringing this up because there was concern by some of the fellow members on the, I guess we're going to call it the Council on Aging and Disabilities, that the function that used to exist for the aging population not get caught up in the issues with the Health and Human Services Board, and that the aging population be fully represented as they had been in the past. That's my reason for this question.
But my understanding is that nothing changes from what has been the business of these bodies in the past. And nothing was written into this with that intent to change any function. Yeah.
I hope you don't hear me implying that, because that's not my implication. I'm just wanting an understanding that this subcommittee of, we're going to call it the Council on Aging and Disabilities, I guess, has the right to come directly to the county board with any concerns they have about the programs of the ADRC. And that they do not have to report through the Health and Human Services Board. That's my question.
Greg, I think when that was originally set up, the Council on Aging and Disabilities was going to be a separate entity, and it would kind of act on its own, but when it wanted to come to the board, it either went through the ADRC director or through Fred Johnson. That's why Fred Johnson sits on the ADRC board, so if there are any issues that come up, he can be aware of what's happening in Health and Human Services, what's happening in ADRC, and what's happening in the Council on Aging. It doesn't mean that Health and Human Services Board has any control or would interact in any way with Council on Aging. That's a separate entity.
I'm sure that if the Council on Aging and Disabilities leadership wants to make a presentation to the county board, that they're going to have access to it.
Nobody will stop them. We know that for sure.
Buzz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to comment on the cover letter that we received from the Corporation Council that contains a list of substantive changes, the first of which is it's a single sheet, the cover letter. The first of the substantive changes is removed the 3 questions to be asked of candidates for the county board chair in current Article 3, Section A, and that reads, at the close of nominations, this is at the April meeting now, each nominee for chair shall address the Board of Supervisors by responding to the following questions. 1, as county board chair, what will be your major objectives and priorities? 2, if you are elected, what are the things you will try to change or do differently as county board chair? And 3, how would you describe the style you would use in working with your fellow supervisors, county committees, and county staff? I am very concerned about the removal of those 3 questions from the new rules and bylaws because I think they fulfill an important role in their presence right now in our current rules and bylaws. I think in these days it's very important that we have accountability on elected officials, and I'm looking at the possibility that 2, 3, 4 people might be running for county board chair. This puts all of those candidates on a same level playing field to the extent that each of them is asked the same 3 questions. And therefore, I'm going to introduce the motion that those 3 questions be retained in the rules and bylaws under officers and duties. And I respectfully ask for a second.
I'll second his motion.
Motion made to retain and a second to that motion to retain the 3 questions to be asked of the candidates for.
And could I also ask for a roll call vote?
Discussion, Darrell?
I'm not particularly opposed to that, but maybe I could give you a little bit of the dialogue that we had as we discussed this. The last 2 election cycles when we've elected county board chairs, if you can recall, we didn't even ask the questions. So I mean, we had these and then didn't even use them and follow them.
I had prepared remarks and did.
Well, maybe you had prepared remarks, but we didn't.
Roger was caught by surprise and had to kind of say me too. But no, I had prepared answers. And I delivered it from that podium.
Well, and also, this doesn't preclude presentations or questions to and answers from the candidates. It just removes those 3 specific questions and actually opens it up to the board to ask anything you'd like, that the board would like.
Nor does my motion preclude what you just said.
No, I know Buzz and I had talked about this, and from my standpoint, I have no objection to the 3 questions, but I really felt like Darrell did. The whole thing boils down to you stand up and be honest with the people. That's the whole key, because you got 2 years of being honest. If you're not, you got a problem. So, but I have no objection to the 3 questions. I mean, that's. Go ahead.
We all know that there's going to be some turnover when the new board is elected, and I think especially for the benefit of newly elected board members, it's important that the playing field be level and that a candidate or candidates nominated for board chair all respond uniformly. I didn't say that right. All respond to 3 uniformly worded questions.
Linda, do you have a question or comment?
Turn on your microphone, please.
I was just going to say the same thing he just said, that I think it's useful for brand-new board members to be able to hear the candidates answer those questions, and because they may not know the individuals, and it gives them an opportunity to learn something about them. And how they
There's a motion and a second on the floor to retain those three questions. And there's a request for a roll call vote, okay?
Everybody understand? They're voting on motion to retain the three questions.
Yes retains, no doesn't.
Just part of point of order. I'm just wondering why we need a roll call vote, which is going to take a bunch of time. I don't think this is very controversial, so I just wonder why the supervisor thinks we need a roll call vote.
Okay, we'll have the roll call vote.
Ryan Seacard? Yes. Can we take that out? Dan Rabel? Yes. Alfred Schrank?
Yes.
Julie Spear?
Yes.
Joe Hurchin?
Yes.
Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Greg Teledon is gone. Roger Larson?
Yes.
Dick King is gone. Frederick Horn is gone. John Mortensen?
Here, yes.
Esther Wentz? Esther Wentz?
Yes.
Gene Ritz?
Yes.
David Peterson?
Yes.
David Osnes?
Yes.
Lauren Sather?
Sure, yes.
Richard Marzoff? Sharon Norton Bauman? Peter Post?
Yes.
Roger Rebholz?
Yes.
Daryl Standifer?
Yes.
John Borp is gone. Clarence Malik? Steve Hermson?
Yes.
Kenneth Colby?
Yes.
Cindy Leonard is gone. And Linda Lucky?
Yes.
That will be recorded as unanimous.
Yes.
That's unanimous. Okay, that,
Mr. Chairman, perhaps the clerk should send out some instructions to all newly elected supervisors that if they anticipate being nominated for chairman, that they should have answers to these questions prepared.
Just a question, is it possible that when the questions are presented or when the candidates for chair, is it possible for the people to ask questions of those? They are. I didn't know if that was entitled or if that was an opening. All right,
sure,
thanks.
you may do that.
Yeah, I have a substantive motion to make. I think this business of the chair of the committee of the whole is likely to work better with one small change. I'm looking at page 5 of the bylaws, Article Roman numeral 3, Committee of the Whole, Section C, Chair of the Committee of the Whole. It says the county board chair shall appoint a chair of the committee of the whole at each meeting, so that by being disengaged from the difficulties that may arise in the committee, et cetera, et cetera. I think it would probably work better if instead of shall, it said may, because there are probably going to be some situations where the chair is not finding it necessary to engage in the debate. I think that's what this is primarily aimed at. And so some flexibility sounds desirable here, rather than an inflexible rule that says we must have a different person chairing whenever it's decided to be a committee of the whole. So my amendment is to change the word shall to the word may.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Motion is made and seconded to amend to, in that section, the word may instead of shall.
I do not insist on a roll call vote.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. It is carries. Now, Peter, you had a question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking at the bylaws, page 16. Section A, Item 1, I'm just wondering if rather than doing the old status quo, if this body shouldn't consider changing the meeting time to like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, kind of move into the 21st century, rather than be part of the agricultural economy of old. We would certainly open up an opportunity for people to get back to the community if it was a late afternoon meeting as opposed to a morning meeting.
Was that a motion or just a suggestion? I personally wouldn't object to having all our meetings at 7 o'clock at night and have an occasional one during the day. Now, there's a lot of people that are disenfranchised from being participants of the county board process because they work during the day. If we have 7 o'clock meetings in the evening, and like I said, I don't know if we want a motion to that effect. I mean, I'd prefer 7 o'clock meetings. No, I prefer 9 o'clock meetings, but I think it'd be better for the community and the county as a whole to meet in the evenings when more people can participate.
Darrell?
I absolutely agree with both of those. I would prefer not to have day meetings. However, having said that, keep in mind that there is a whole other group of people that we need to consider, and a group of people that we frequently come here for reports and discussions and presentations, and that is our employee group. And if we are asking an employee of the county to come other than during a work time, we potentially are placing a burden on that employee. I'm not saying that that can't be overcome. I'm just saying keep that in mind as you're considering moving to other than a daytime structure. Personally, if it was only me, I'd much prefer that. I mean, I said that from the day I came on the county board, and that's when I was working for a living. I would have much preferred not having day meetings.
Sharon?
Thank you, Board Chair. I've had constituents in my district bring up to me the idea of having evening meetings so that they could attend. Having said that, though, the new board has the authority to change these meeting dates if they want to, meeting dates and times. So rather than us imposing our will on the new board, I think it would be more correctly done to have the new board consider this part of these bylaws.
Lauren?
Just a comment, I agree with Darrell up to a point where most of the people who come here to give a presentation are usually department heads. Department heads are salaried employees. I know when I started 17 years ago, I occasionally had to go to evening meetings for veterans organizations. And I was told that, if you spend a few hours in the evening, it's okay to take a couple hours off later on in the week. I mean, we're salaried. Most department heads, all department heads are non-represented salaried employees. I think it's almost like equivalent flex time. So I think they could easily work around that and have it be part of their duty to attend a meeting when requested.
We're back to the motion to resolve this resolution. The resolution is motion's on the floor, and there's been a second. We maybe should reread that motion, and who seconded it? I don't remember. Peter Post did, that's right. I'm talking about the motion to adopt the rules and bylaws.
There's a motion by Supervisor Standifer, second by Supervisor Seacard to approve the resolution, and now it's been amended twice.
Sharon?
Thank you, Board Chair. I have a question of the two supervisors from the Administration Committee who did not vote for this resolution. If they would please give us some insight as to what their objections were.
I was one of the supervisors that voted against it, and as Supervisor Standoffer reminded both Dick King and myself of why we had voted against it, it was because of the changing of the Board of Adjustment to having at least one supervisor, but not more than two supervisors. And we both felt that that was something we didn't want to see, that we thought we ought to keep the 3 supervisors that we currently have on that program.
Yes, thanks, Board Chair. I guess I will make an amendment, request to amend the motion to change the meetings times to evenings, given that the Board Chair has the ability to change the time. I think from the discussion we've heard here, and that we need to do due diligence to help give our public as much chance to come to these meetings as possible. I'd like to make a motion to amend and change the times to be nighttime meetings with the provision that the Board Chair can change under...
Motion made and seconded to change the meetings to what time? 7 o'clock. Any other discussion? Mr. Reed.
I like to appreciate that motion, but I got to let you know, I put my papers in not to run again because of my employment. And if that's the case, I wonder if we could change bylaws that I could get my papers back in, But what I'm saying is, there was reasons, my employment maybe that I couldn't commit that many hours to the board and give the people that just, word that they need to have. And so with that, I've got to go against that because I think the next board can make that decision and we should not be making that decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reference was made to getting with the 20th century. With all due respect to that remark, I would like to ask any member of the ag community who will be affected by this, I think, what their thoughts are, if they care to speak.
I guess I'll reply. I don't know if I represent the Ag Committee, but yes, the evening meetings would be a little more difficult to make. I talked with Joe and myself that, meetings that end at noon don't really affect us. Getting this late, they do, but the evening meeting would be would make it more difficult to attend.
Right.
Esther?
I think it's unfortunate that we try to divide our board into those that are employed in a job and those that aren't. I do know that under state statutes that if you are elected to a position that your employer, I believe it's just like jury duty, has to allow you to attend that function. At least that was what it was when I was teaching. As a teacher, if I were elected to a position or if I were on jury duty, I was allowed to go to whatever I had to go to. And I think you also have to understand that there are those of us who have reached that retirement age and then some who really don't like coming out in the middle of winter at night and drive on icy roads. And I think that's something that we all should take into consideration. It's not just the people working, but it's those of us that are retired that don't like to drive in the wintertime.
I would add to this point that I think it was an August meeting, sitting next to me on my right a few years ago, Chris Bethke hit a deer on the way home after an evening meeting, and I just mentioned that that problem presents itself too.
One more thing to add on that amendment. We have had 7 o'clock meetings, and if you looked behind us, those chairs were represented the same way they are during day meetings, so I don't know if that's actually a good argument.
Oh, really? Thank you. This discussion has been real good today, but I like what was said over here in the back. Why don't we let the people that are going to be sitting here next time decide when they want to meet? End of comment.
It'll stay the way it is until the new board comes on. Okay? Now, we're back to the original motion that came about. I think I'm right anyway, aren't I? We got to adopt the rules, huh? We've got to adopt the rules. I think we need to say that the attached rules and bylaws of the Board of Supervisors of St. Croix County as amended. Oh. So you put as amended right here. Right here. Paragraph 4? Yeah, right here. As amended. As amended. As amended. Okay, we do need to show the amendment on this resolution that we put before you. So if you pick up your resolution and look at the back page, on the first therefore, that should be changed to read, be it resolved by the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors that the attached rules and bylaws of the Board of Supervisors of St. County, as amended, Wisconsin, as amended, is hereby adopted. I'd like a motion on that, if you would. Peter, and the second is over from Buzz.
There's a motion, there's a motion.
Oh.
This is a motion to amend.
This is a motion to amend that wording. As corrected. Because it's an addition to the motion as it's set before us. There's a motion and a second on it.
I'm sorry, who made it?
Pardon me?
Who made that motion?
Peterson, Jerry Peterson, and Buzz seconded it. You got a question in your mind. Buzz?
I question the use of the word corrected. We made grammatical and syntax corrections, but then we amended the resolution to exclude one of the substantive recommendations about the 3 questions, and that's an amendment.
How about yeah. Okay, amending is okay. Amended is word, same thing as corrected.
Thank you.
Those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Carried. Okay, now we will, I hope, go forward on the adoption of the bylaws that are before us, that resolution that's before us originally today. The motion is out there and the second is out there. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Aye. One against it, okay?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'll try and make this short and sweet. Basically, you did get the printout, I think, in the green form for my annual report. Just starting at the top, we'll quickly kind of go review. We finished the 2009 tax billing cycle, which is the 4th year in a row that the county treasurer's office has taken the tax printing from real property listers. So this is the 4th year. We continue the implementation of the GCS Municipal Taxware program, which allows 16 municipalities to do their own collecting. The local treasurer receipts the tax money, and then on their computer system, they generate a tax file, which is emailed to the county treasurer, and then this tax file is then downloaded into the county's database. And it usually takes about 48 hours to update on our website, so the taxpayer can go out there and and look and see that that payment's been made. So just a footnote to let you know the timing in that. Excuse me. Again, we contracted 12 of the 35 municipalities to collect the first installments of 2009 taxes. There was a service fee of 75 cents per parcel, which generated about $20,000 of revenue for this service. So also, since January 2004, we have what's called the online tax payment system. Provides the opportunity for a taxpayer to pay their taxes online. They can use the ACH debit card or their credit card. And again, the convenience fee for the credit card is a 2.35% of the balance, or a $3 flat fee, which is used for debit card. And this fee is not retained by the county. It's a fee that the same-day pay charges. So again, it's on the taxpayer and that it is collected. It's no cost to the county. As you can see, going down through the years from 2006 forward, the increase as far as dollars paid online, there was a considerable increase the first year in 2006 at 80%. The following year, 2007, was 39%. 2008, 41% increase. And then this last year, we only had a 4% increase. And I'm just thinking perhaps, the 2009 tax collection year is not over yet. We still have more collections to go in the next several months, or at least through July. So I'm thinking there's going to be some more payments coming in using online pay. So basically that's the breakdown right there, and then the dollar amounts that have been paid using the online pay system. Also, the next section you can see where we collected ag use penalty for county revenue, and then this last tax year, 2009, there was a little over $15,000 of revenue collected for ag use penalty. See, going on to our comparison figures on the second page, you can see the breakdown of the tax roll amounts going from year 2005 through 2009. You can see delinquencies at year end. Those are at year end, December 31st, and that's not including interest and penalties. So those figures are just straight tax. Also, just a footnote in comparing this year to last year, December of 2008, we receipted $10 million, and then this year, 2009, it was over close to $17 million. So you can see we were quite busy this last few months. Also, in the tax deeding information, you can see how the parcels have increased over the years. However, looking at 2009, since November, when we started with 297 parcels, we're down to now 131 parcels, which is a good sign because those 2006 taxes are being paid as they come up closer to the tax deed process, where we start to actually the beginning where it goes out and publicized and that. So we basically took 166 parcels out of that tax deed process. Also, you can see total unpaid delinquent tax, including interest and penalty, where it was at July 31st. And there was a 20% increase from last year to this year. Also, just another footnote down there, you'll see Valley View Management paid 2006 through 2008 delinquent tax. That check just came into our office, and it was like over $182,000. And you can see the breakdown on that, interest and penalty and the general tax. And I want to believe that part of that had to do with when we do a spectrum of search on the parcel owner and other companies that are involved in that parcel, like a lender, we're trying to be very thorough in notifying everyone so they all know that this process or the parcel is going into a tax deed process. So I actually got a phone call from a gentleman with State Bank and Trust, which was in North Dakota. They were actually the backers of the funding for this. So I stayed in touch with him, and then the check did come in, like I said, in this last week to take care of all 3 years. They just wanted to pay it off and get it done and bring it current. So basically that's how that kind of played out. Also, you can see under the treasurer's receipts how much we receipted from 2007 and through 2009. It was basically over $147 million. It's what we receipted in. Also, another footnote for tax deed process, on the postage alone, it did cost the county was $1,200 for just postage alone, and that's what it cost to like mail all these notices and make sure we were doing the job we were supposed to do to notify all these people. So I just thought I'd mention what that cost is. So we do include that on the budget for the treasurer's office, so that was part of that budget, and that's what that covers. So then moving on down, you can see how the tax roll is allocated by the townships, villages, and city, and you can see that breakdown, which totals the $143 million tax roll that we have currently. So it's been quite busy in our office, as you can tell. We printers were going like crazy. I think the first week we turned on the printers, I think it was the December 4th where we turned them on, and we were going at it for a whole week. So, but all in all, I think everything went pretty well. I mean, I think I expected the worst. Maybe that's why I feel it was, but we got everything done and had no complaints, so we were real happy about that. So, yeah. Are there any questions right now? And yes, Daryl?
Not a question so much as an observation, and maybe just a comment to all of my fellow supervisors. It's difficult frequently to try and explain to a taxpayer in your constituency why the amount of tax increase or decrease in a given municipality, a town, a city, or a village does not equal the amount of, on a percentage basis, what the county budget was. And my village of North Hudson is probably a real good example of that this year. The amount of property tax increase that we had countywide when we adopted our budget, if you'll recall, was 4.4%. Property taxes countywide, the amount of levy countywide that we increased was 4.4%. So you would think that the amount of county increase in each one of our districts would go up 4.4%. Well, obviously that's not the case. Is there anybody here that the county line in your taxing jurisdiction went up 4.4? No. Some went up more than that, and some went up quite a bit less than that. The difficulty is that even though our county taxes countywide went up 4.4%, when that allocation is done, it is based on the equalized valuation figures that the county receives from the State Department of Revenue. So when those figures come into the county, the amount of our increase simply gets divided out based on the assessment formula into that. Now, interestingly enough, the assessed valuation countywide went down in every single taxing jurisdiction except for two. And that was the town of Forest and the village of North Hudson. Now, what that means is that the portion of the increase countywide went up for the village of North Hudson in terms of the percentage that was paid. Previous year, it was 4.72% of that pie is what was paid in my district. But in the budget that we just adopted, that went to 4.745. Now, that's only 2.5 basis points. But that 2.5 basis points increase means that we paid more of the pie. City of New Richmond got a nice break, it went down. But our portion that went up means that even though we did, in fact, raise property taxes, countywide 4.4%, the percentage that shows in the county line in my district is 10.7. So everybody in North Hudson thinks we raised property taxes 10.7%. No, we didn't. We raised them 4.4%. But because relative to everybody else, the village's assessed valuation is a higher percentage of the county, it went up. So I'll bet every single one of you trying to explain to a taxpayer why the 4.4 doesn't match what you've got, that's the answer.
Thank you, Daryl. Thanks. Yep. Yes?
Thank you. In previous years, we've been apprised of the situation with the St. Croix Meadows dog track and their delinquent tax status. Can you bring us up to speed on that for this year?
Yes, they actually paid to date, so they are current. They are current with their tax.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chair. Say, Lori, I like this breakdown you have here on the, showing the total unpaid delinquent taxes that you got on the back, and showing a 20% increase from last year. And it's good for voters to know that the county is holding on the books, basically, or we're holding the purse for the $8.8 million that does affect our budget. And that the county is required to make all municipalities' budgets whole. And we're left holding the $8.8 million. School district, gotta hold my tongue. What I'd be very curious to see, with a 20% increase, it might be beneficial to know what municipalities got impacted the most by where that increase came from. I'm wondering, is that possible to generate a report on that?
Yes, actually, I could do the breakdown by running that report, giving subtotals by municipality, and going forward, I'll take a look at that. I'll run a report that could show that, and going, right, yes.
Could be portions of the county. Supervisors would probably be very interested in knowing if their area is impacted harder than others.
Okay, sure. I can certainly do that next time going forward. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you much, Lori.
Yeah. Also, Roger, I wanted to add one other thing before I forget. We did implement a scanning project that worked very well. All the tax bills you probably noticed on your tax bill, if not the barcode that came on your tax bill. We have 2 scanners at the front counter that worked very well, and just with a matter of running that over that barcode, it brings that parcel up, and with a stroke of a key, it's paid, versus like keying the whole parcel number in. So I think I may be adding more scanners to our department because it worked out very well, and it's really cutting down on the time, especially when you have those individuals coming in that do manually collecting, and then they have some 200 receipts that we have to scan in. It cut down on a lot of time, so efficiency, it was very good. And actually some local collectors might want to look into that too. It's a possibility they may use that instead of keying in by hand. Just one stroke and your parcel's right up, open to receive the payment. So I just thought I'd mention that worked out really well this year. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a good day. Thanks. Thanks.
We'll have Cindy give her report here. She's got it, I think all of you have the tan.
It feels good to stand up. We're sitting for hours, so good afternoon. I'm Cindy Campbell, County Clerk. My annual report was mailed out to you last week, and I'll just quickly review it. Voter registrations. We collect a fee for the municipalities that rely on the county for voter registration service. In 2009, that fee was $8,120. That's based on elections, the number of elections, and the population of the municipality. In 2010, in 2009 we had 21 reliers. In 2010, we'll go down to 19 reliers. Quick review of the 2 elections, spring elections we had in 2009. We had a spring primary. There was a statewide spring primary for state superintendent of public instruction. We had a few municipal and school primaries as well. We had a total countywide of total voters of 1,352 voters in February of 2009. April of 2009, the spring election, we had a voter turnout of 8,173, and the races are explained on the report. Just to summarize, in the spring elections, the county does charge back to the municipalities and schools for the coding and publication and printing costs, so that fee is there, and it's basically a third, depending on the races. So. Voting equipment, we maintain the same voting equipment we've had for the last few years. We have the touchscreen voting equipment. We just had training on that last week. And the AccuVote optical scan system, and then we have 5 municipalities still using paper ballots in addition to the touchscreen voting equipment, which is required. I won't go through all the duties. I was going to touch base a little bit on the county board functions and the per diem request that was brought up in the rules and bylaws change with the change of having sign-in sheets for committee meetings and county board meetings. Review of marriage licenses. 2009, we issued 405 marriage licenses. And effective actually August 3rd, we were issuing domestic partnerships. And in 2009, we had a total of 21 issued. You'll notice the waiver fee on that. The fees are the same for marriage licenses as domestic partnerships. The waiver fees, most of the domestic partnerships were waived. There's a 5-day waiting period, which is the same for the marriage licenses, but it's a certificate that the applicants may take and file with the Register of Deeds. So all but 2 waived the 5-day waiting period and filed it that same day that they applied. The domestic partnerships was a quick turnaround. I want to thank the Department of Health Services. We had a month to prepare for this, and we met. I'm also a member of the County Clerk Marriage License Committee, which was part of that, so we met and had several conference calls in getting this implemented and the forms up and running for the August 3rd start date. Yes, vehicle registrations were down. You'll see that. Passports slightly down from the previous years. The implementation of the passport card is also in place. The acceptance agents receive a $25 execution fee for each application processed, and that's the fees that you see on the chart. We also issue work permits, validate DNR, ATV and snowmobile registrations, and then just a summary of the number of dog license tags that were distributed to the municipalities, and we also collect for that in February and then throughout the year. Any questions on anything that I have? Just a quick summary, one more thing, quick summary. There was, in 2009, the Government Accountability Board explored early voting, which is different than absentee voting. It would be where you'd set up actual equipment in place so you could vote and cast your ballot. They're changing that. I don't know if they're probably not going to go that route from what I've heard, but more streamlining the absentee process to make it a little bit better for the municipal clerks. Just a thanks to my team, Renee, Patty, Amy. They're great to work with. IT, building services, Greg, Corporation Counsel answers most of my questions, and that's it. Any questions? Anything?
Cindy, Roger.
Yes.
What is domestic partnership? What is that? It's just,
For domestic partnerships. Domestic partnerships are issued to same sex. Pardon me? Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
I have no correspondence and no rezoning requests. You'll be getting this notice. Linda Lucky gave me this notice that Jerry Chasteen from the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission is retiring, and his party is January 21st at Hooligans Pub in Eau Claire. I'll send this out as a reminder.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.